Affirming Black Manhood, taking back the power to define, develop, protect and project what it means to be a black man in today's world. On Sunday the 20th of June, we invite you to join the conversations facilitated by our esteemed lineup, engaging us all in addressing various aspects of black manhood from a range of perspectives, featuring Baba Mwalimu Baruti, defining principles of black manhood, Robin Walker, the economics of black manhood, Ifayomi Grant, rebuilding productive African manhood whilst challenging misogyny, Brother Leader Bandaka, black manhood, fatherhood and rites of passage, Baba Buntu, building black brotherhood. This is an online event taking place Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021 from 12 p.m. UK time. For tickets and more information, visit shakaraspeaks.com. International guests, feel free to join us at any time or catch the playback. This is an event for black men by black men. Affirming Black Manhood. Affirming Black Manhood, taking back the power to define, develop, protect and project what it means to be a black man in today's world. On Sunday the 20th of June, we invite you to join the conversations facilitated by our esteemed lineup, engaging us all in addressing various aspects of black manhood from a range of perspectives, featuring Baba Mwalimu Baruti, defining principles of black manhood, Robin Walker, the economics of black manhood, Ifayomi Grant, rebuilding productive African manhood whilst challenging misogyny, Brother Leader Bandaka, black manhood, fatherhood and rites of passage, Baba Buntu, building black brotherhood. This is an online event taking place Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021 from 12 p.m. UK time. For tickets and more information, visit shakaraspeaks.com. International guests, feel free to join us at any time or catch the playback. This is an event for black men by black men. Affirming Black Manhood. Greetings, family, greetings, and welcome to this special edition of a Shakara Speak session. As you know, we got the big event coming up, Affirming Black Manhood on the 20th of June. And we're engaging in a series of conversation, pertaining to African manhood, what it means, and all these things. And I've been hosting a few live chats, in fact, there was one scheduled for last week that didn't quite happen. So this is effectively the second. The week before, I was looking at, it happened to be the birthday of Omawale Malcolm X. And so I was just exploring how his example, informed me in terms of what it means to be a man, and breaking that down in some very simple terms. So for all information regarding the event itself, please check out shakaraspeaks.com, as you can see on the screen, and I look forward to seeing my brothers in the house. I've had a few sisters asking me if they can come, if they can pass through, and so what we're saying is that it's a man them event. It's a brothers event, it's a man event for discuss man issues, but we are encouraging our sisters to expose the men in their lives to the event, to the extent that you think it would benefit them, and I'm sure you think it would if you want to be there yourself. All right, so get one for your husband, get one for your brother, get one for your son, get one for your father, your uncle, your soon to be, the man we're interested in, all of the above, kings and queens. Get let them know, about the event, and if you want to gift them a ticket, feel free to do so. Okay. So today is going to be a special conversation. My guest is somebody that I actually wanted to feature on the event itself, but because of the beautiful work that he is doing, he was unable, to feature at the event live. But I figured it would be prudent, and good, and a treat to you all to get him on the platform, prior to the event, so you can feast off the wellspring of his knowledge, his wisdom, and his work, kings and queens. And so we're gonna delve into the work that our Baba is doing in a second. But for now, let me introduce you to Mkhulu, Mhleli, Linda, and we're going to bring him through right about now. Greetings, Mkhulu.
Greetings to you. Greetings, brother, to everybody, your audience, and everyone right around the world, all the Africans, the beautiful Africans. Greeting to you all.
Greetings, and thank you very much for joining me. I appreciate it. Just to give people an explanation, Mkhulu is a title, correct? and it means
Yes.
grandfather in Zulu. So when we say Mkhulu, we're go on.
Yes, it is grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
How it comes about is when you are an indigenous healer, like such as I am, you
Mm-hmm.
are inhibited by your ancestors, your grandfathers, your grandmothers, and it depends on which ancestor becomes in charge.
Yes.
So then you take upon that. Some are known as abokoko,
Right.
even though they are male, but it doesn't mean that they have suddenly become female. But it simply means that they are walking with the ancient grandmothers. So
Yes.
that's how you get the title.
Yes, brother. Yes, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So when we refer to you as Mkhulu, we are really giving expression to your function. Yes, in the community in that respect. Am I correct?
Yes. Precisely
Good.
so.
And I was struggling to pronounce your first name. Say it for us, please.
Mhleli.
Mhleli.
Mhleli, yes. Mhleli means organizer, editor,
Beautiful.
organizer. My grandparents gave me my both my names.
Right.
My second name Squealy means wealth.
Right.
So my grandmother said "Umhleli wezinto yini mathongo," meaning that the organizers of everything are the great spirits and the ancestors, because they had boys who were stillborn. So they didn't get an opportunity to have a boy child or boy children, and I was the first boy in the family.
Okay.
So then they were thanking the ancestors that they conspired to organize for a boy to be born at last.
Yes.
My grandfather said he's wealthy now that he has a grandson, that there's a grandson in the house, which is my second name, Squealy.
Right. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm a great appreciator of all African names, and so I always take a moment to to get the meanings and the significance, because there's stories. Our names have stories behind them, and you've just given expression to that. So Mkhulu, I really got to know about you. Was made aware of you because you recently featured on the Unstuck show with one of my jugglers, my teachers in life, Baba Buntu. I was really looking for someone to feature on the event to really break down exactly what you are breaking down. And I feel like it's a Sankofa moment. Sankofa in the Akan language means to go back and fetch, because we're having,
yes.
Right, you know what I'm saying? Because we're having a lot of these issues and questions concerning our manhood, at the moment. And it appears to me that our ancestors have some things to teach us. And even though we're told that our traditions are now outdated, they have no relevance in today's world, I think that people like yourself are proving that to be incorrect. So before we get into the subject, just explain to our viewers what the work that you do, in particular with Zazi, Know Thyself, and also your Rites of Passage work.
Yes, Zazi, Know Thyself is okay. The word itself, Zazi, actually means know thyself. It's a Nguni word which is used by the Ndebele people, the Swati people, the Zulu people, the Xhosa people, all the Nguni people. So if we say umuntu akazazi, we mean that the person does not know who he or she is. So Zazi means know thyself, and hence the title of that entity, Zazi, Know Thyself. And as you know, that is one of the greatest maxims of our ancient ancestors in Kemet, to know yourself, know thyself, and to thyself be true. You cannot be true to yourself if you don't know who you are. And as a result, you cannot be true to anybody else. So Zazi is a research entity. It's work that my ancestors have called me to do. So we research indigenous knowledge systems and practices and spirituality. And in the process, we also seek to give back by teaching African indigenous spirituality and practice, culture, philosophy. So yes, the word itself also came from the names of our children. Our son, when he was born in 2003, his name, I gave him the name Zanda, meaning augmentation, because he came to augment the family name. And 2.5 years later, the Princess Zintle was born. Zintle Ntombi Zakwalinda, she brought beauty into the family name. And so the first two letters of their names, Zanda and Zintle, also makes Zazi.
Right, beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that.
And then,
go ahead.
Yes, and then in terms of the rites of passage, this is the work that I'm very much involved in a lot of traditional work, Zulu customary work. My daughter is part of the rites of passage for girls, and you might see the girls the virgin maidens who take the reed up to the king every year, as a symbol of their virginity, and a symbol of their holiness, because their bodies are actually holy, because by maintaining their virginity, there's work that is important for the entire nation that they can do. For example, to pray for the rain. Only virgin girls can pray for the rain, and that's an important function which the nation at large relies upon. So similarly, the boys as well. We do that work with the boys where we keep their bodies holy, and we keep them away from sexual conduct. And their birthright is to protect. Now, a lot of the time when we talk about protection, people think that we protect women and girls because they cannot protect themselves. No, that is not it. We protect them because they are important. I've just explained to you now the importance of virgin girls and their function, their role in our society. So we protect them because they are important, because if we violate them, then we're violating the nation. That's how important that's how significant this is. So the rites of passage is to bring back the manner in which boys are to be raised, so that they get into manhood and understand their role and understand how great a woman is. To the extent that when they get that understanding, there will be no gender violence, because we all understand how great a woman is. We've all seen it even right now. We see our regent now, who, the king, who has succeeded his father, uZwelithini kaBhekuzulu. Mrs. Zulu kaZwelithini could not take up the throne unless he marries a princess, so that he then becomes king, and then she becomes queen. So if it takes a woman really to make you a man, to make you a king, just how great is a woman? So do you see how it all fits in? These rites of passage are very, very important.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right, we're going to come back to that. As I said earlier, in fact, let me take a moment before I get into that. You mentioned the Zulu being one among the larger family of the Unguni. Yes.
Yes.
And I want to take a moment to probe that slightly, only because we live in 2021, if we're going by the Gregorian calendar, and people still have the impression or the opinion that Africa and African peoples are largely, and by and large, groups of very small, isolated tribes, yes, of people that have no connection to each other, to the extent that they're always warring, right? And so when we get to understand, and people know the Zulu, yes, because of Shaka, yes, but very few people understand the Zulu as a part of an interrelated larger family of people, yes,
Yes.
of a nation. All right, and in fact that is related to peoples all over Southern Africa. For example, the Zulu are also related to the Ndebele in Zimbabwe. You know what I'm saying? And these kinds of things. Could you just give a brief explanation of that for me, please, in terms of the Unguni? What is the Unguni, and how is it that we only know them as so-called tribes, smaller tribes today?
The reason why we know them as smaller tribes is unfortunately due to colonialism, the disturbance that took place on this continent through colonial interference. We were never isolated tribes as we are now. If you consider the fact that the whole continent was ruled by powerful kingdoms prior to the Berlin Conference of 1884 and 1885, where 13 European states and the United States of America got together under the instruction of Otto von Bismarck and decided how they were going to divide Africa among themselves. Not a single African was present at that conference. And what they did was, if you look at how we were split up, the kingdoms were in themselves cut up into pieces and thereby segregating people, forming tribes. The Rwandan and Burundian people are part of the Congo people, are part of the Ugandan people, for example. You look at ourselves here in the South, we are part of the Zimbabwean people, we're part of the Botswana people, we're part of the Swazi people, the Mozambicans. I'll give you an example in terms of Mozambique. I was speaking to King Gungunyane, His Majesty King Gungunyane of Mozambique 2 Fridays ago. And he comes from the tribe, or I actually don't like the word tribe. I prefer clan. I prefer nation, because we are nations. We are nations of greatness. Let us not trivialize who we are, our status. We shouldn't do that. We must refrain from doing so. Let's return our greatness, because indeed we are great. Now, Ungungunyane, His Majesty King Gungunyane, he is from the Ngumayo tribe, clan, the Ngumayo nation. The Ngumayo nation migrated further south, and when it migrated further south, it became the Ngumalu, because the dialect changed slightly as people moved and they interact with other people and they come across other nations, other Nguni nations. It became Ngumalu, but it's the same people. Their clan names are the same. Ondwandwe Labo. And our part of our very first kingdoms as Zulu people comes from that. They were the Ndwandwes. Then they were also another sect, which was the Mthethwas. And from the Mthethwas and the Ndwandwes came the Zulu. And then Shaka sought to unite these different clans into one larger nation, which is why he is a king of kings. He's not a king of chiefs. He's not a king of Izinduna. He's a king of kings, which makes him an emperor, because he's in charge of an empire. And they refuse to give him that status. But I am saying, what else would you call a king of other kings? He has a kingdom, even to this day. We still have our kingdoms within the kingdom of KwaZulu-Natal, KwaZulu. So that's how we come from. Let me just take you a step back and talk about the beautiful work that was done by the late great Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. He spoke about the origin of man, okay, the first man. The first man originated in the Great Lakes region. Those were the Twa people, okay? the Twa people then spread out all over the continent, even came to the south. We still have the Twa people, the people whom we know, or that the Europeans started calling Bushmen. Those are the Twa people, Abatwa. And those are that's the genesis of all Africans. So if you say we are not related, then what are you saying? Do you even understand who you are?
Yes,
And the relationship goes further, and it goes to and fro, because just as I explained how the Ngumayo came down and became Onqumalo, Ozwit, Ondwandwe, and became the nation of the Zulu. They started forming the nation of AmaZulu. Umzilikazi also migrated during the times of King Shaka, migrated northwards again. And in Zimbabwe, in Gwabulawayo, his grave is there, Gwabulawayo, Umzilikazi. So the Zimbabwean people are also our people. We went back to our people. So you can't say that we are different and we are not connected to each other. We are very much connected to each other.
Beautiful. Thank you for that, Baba. You know, we could go more into that, you know what I'm saying, but we'll have to come back to that another day, because it's a stereotype that I believe is wreaking a lot of havoc, because so many of us, even on the continent, but certainly in diaspora, have been educated into a colonial ideal of ourselves. And so we see ourselves through colonial eyes. And so that is a very important subject to actually deal with. But I was getting to the point whereby I was talking about the fact that in attempting to get you on the event, you informed me of an event that you were doing around the same time. Yeah. So I just want to let people know, because we don't want people to just feel like you was being idle, you know what I mean? So we're gonna let people know exactly why you're not able to make it, so you can let people know about the pilgrimage that you have that you're hosting between the 18th and the 20th. Yeah. So obviously, Affirming Black Manhood takes place on the 20th. Mkhulu is unable to make it because he is actually in the midst of this pilgrimage right here. So please let the people know about this pilgrimage and what it signifies.
Yes, this pilgrimage, it follows the spirituality of our ancestors. Now, our ancestors followed nature. If you look at Medu the language of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, okay, that divine language, the word nature, meaning the divine. All right, our ancestors were observing nature. And when we see, for example, the heads of animals on top of human bodies, as depicted in Kemet, we were not praying to animals, but what we were looking at was the attributes of certain animals. And this goes throughout the continent. We were looking at attributes of animals and their characteristics, and then looking at us as individuals and how we take upon those characteristics and functions. So they followed the cosmic events as well. If you think, for example, the moon having an effect on water bodies, and think back to the fact that you are 90% water, then you will understand that the moon also affects you, both men and women. We get affected by the moon.
Yes, sir.
And the moon as a celestial body is not the only celestial body that affects us. The sun affects us.
Yes,
the
sir.
stars affect us. So we, by following these cosmic events, we then observe that alignment so that we are affected in the right way. So this one is called Umkhosi Wokuzalwa Kwelanga, the birth of the sun. Now remember, the 21st of June, in the Southern Hemisphere, it will be the shortest day. And over the 3-day period, the sun begins to make a U-turn. It's in the Northern Hemisphere, right? It'll be the longest day on the 21st of June. And as it makes its U-turn to begin its journey back to the Southern Hemisphere, it is being reborn. So this is the birth of the sun to us in the Southern Hemisphere. So when it is reborn, you are also energized in the same way. There are things in your life that become reborn, and that is what we seek to align ourselves to. So this is what this pilgrimage is about, to align ourselves with the rebirth of the sun, so that we energize, or we harness that energy, so that we can give birth to ourselves, to our spirit, to the things we do, to our ideas, because our ideas are not our own. Nothing is our own. Remember, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So that simply means that we are part of the spiritual realm, and as such, asis phethe siphethwe. So the spirits are in charge of us. The great spirits are in charge of us. And because of that fact, we then need to pay huge attention to these cosmic events and understand them and harness that energy, so that we then maintain our greatness or return to our greatness, because indeed our ancestors did that. If you think about, for example, the word heathen, because I'm not a Christian, because I'm not a Muslim, because I'm not a Jew, I don't subscribe to any Abrahamic religion. I've been called a heathen, I've been called a pagan. Now let's look back at those words, okay? The word pagan originates from the Latin word paganus, which means open land or village, right? Now, the word heathen comes from the word heath, and a heath is also open land. Right. So when Europeans came, they found us living in villages and open lands, and they called us heathens and pagans. Not because we are worshiping something other than what we should be worshiping in the first place. We were one with nature, and because we were one with nature, we didn't need a God. God is everywhere. God is within us. You know, God lives within us. We are divine in so being. You understand? So we don't need an abstract figure who is up in the sky somewhere, who then decides upon your life, but can't even decide on Satan, for example. Yeah, I can't understand why God couldn't kill Satan, but he can kill his son instead. So that doesn't, it never made sense. But there's a reason why it doesn't make sense, because also it is a copy paste of something that our ancestors had written many thousands of years before these stories came up, because the early writings of what we know to be the Bible now started with Ptolemy Philadelphus, who then helped the Jews write their first Jewish Bible, from which then came the Christian Bible and subsequently the Islamic faith. So we understand who we are. That's why it's important that we do this work with Zazi Know Thyself, so that we know who we are. Know thyself. Observe these cosmic events, so that you are in alignment and you understand exactly how nature affects you, because you are one with nature. You are a divine spirit having a human experience.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you very much for that explanation, Baba. There's a powerful importance in ritual, especially for us in the reaffirmation and of ourselves as African people. Yeah. One of my spiritual mamas, Mama Marimba Ani, says through our ritual we learn and relearn and reinforce what it means to be an African. So I truly harmonize with that energy, and so we're sending you energy, even though you can't be with us. You with us in spirit, and so we're sending you spiritual energy at the same time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
We appreciate.
We are indeed one, and this is why, even though today is my Earth Day, I asked my family, I asked my children, I said, listen, please, I've got to do this event because it's very important, because indeed we are one, and we do need to support each other. We do need to, right across the continent, right across the diaspora, we are one. And if we don't do it ourselves, who's going to do it for us? So we need to give off our time. We need to invest in each other, so that we invest in the greater good of Africans as a whole, right through the continent and the diaspora.
Yes, sir. I believe it's in Siabonga is Zulu, is thank you in Zulu.
Yes,
Siabonga. Yeah, so thank you, Siabonga, Mkhulu. How do you say happy birthday in Zulu?
We say Nwele Olude, meaning may you grow as long as hair. because our
Beautiful.
ancestors believed very much. There's been this misnomer that these are dreadlocks. There's nothing dread about this.
Yes, yes, yeah.
It's the Europeans who said these look dreadful. They're not dreadful.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
this is power.
Yes, sir.
So the long hair,
Mm-hmm.
or rather hair hair is one of the very few things in your body that can grow
Mm-hmm.
very long. So
Mm-hmm.
when we say be as long as hair, we mean
Mm-hmm.
continue to grow, because also that hair grows even after a person is deceased. It
Yes, sir. Yes.
continues to grow. So we
Mm-hmm.
say grow perpetually. So
Right.
sitige nwele olude, long hair. May you grow as long as hair. Yeah.
Beautiful. Let me try and say it because I want to get my tongue around this one. Say it again for me.
Nwele olude.
Nuele olude.
Nwele. That's it.
Nuele
Nwele
olude.
olude.
All right,
Yeah.
beautiful. We have to relearn our tongues, kings and queens. Yes, I have no shame, in wrapping my tongue around some Zulu. I'm saying live in front of the people, them, because it's necessary, and we have to respect
Yes.
our languages, family. So let's get to our subject, Mkhulu.
Yeah.
Today, right now, I want to know from you. Let's to start with, in terms of traditionally, and in terms of your work contemporarily, because obviously in many African traditions, you don't just become a man. Your manhood is declared to you by the elder men after you have gone through certain processes, and you have to demonstrate your capability, to be a man. So in the Zulu culture, what are some of the criteria that is required, for a boy to meet in order to be considered a man?
All right. As you grow, there are various stages where children for the most part grow in batches of 7 years,
Mm-hmm.
um, give or take 7 years. But usually, at 7, a child becomes a bit different. Their bodies are different. They behave differently. They become a little bit more independent. They can sort of more or less bath themselves and
Yes, sir.
and eat and so on.
Yes, sir.
And at 14 as well, their bodies also change. Their voices might change as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also another thing that happens, is that a boy at that age also begins to produce, the testicles begin to produce sperm.
Mm-hmm.
So the boy starts having wet dreams.
Mm-hmm.
So he wakes up and he's messed himself. It's a
Mm-hmm.
natural thing. Okay, there's
Yes,
nothing
sir.
to be ashamed of there. It's a natural process. As a parent, you ought to be happy, because these are signs that let you know that your child is normal, and that your child is most likely going to be a father one day.
Mm-hmm.
So there's nothing wrong with that. Similarly, when a girl enters her menstrual cycle, we
Mm-hmm.
know that she is going to create a family one day. So it
Mm-hmm.
is a very beautiful period of time. It's not looked at as she's being dirty. It's not
Mm-hmm.
looked at as he being wanting to be promiscuous or anything like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
a natural change of the body, which we then celebrate. In celebrating it, we then
Right.
educate our boys
Mm-hmm.
how they should behave,
Mm-hmm.
how they should conduct themselves,
Mm-hmm.
how they should behave around their sisters,
Mm-hmm.
because this will become material later on in
Mm-hmm.
terms of how they will behave with their wives. So
Mm-hmm.
they keep on growing, and at different stages, they learn different things through rites of passage.
Mm-hmm.
And then they get to a point where they need to take um, a wife. Okay, he needs to take a wife.
Mm-hmm.
Now, with us in our Zulu culture,
Mm-hmm.
um, a man is not a man. He remains a boy until such time he marries a woman.
Right. Right.
So he can't be regarded a man unless he's married a woman. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
but by then he will have been groomed well enough to understand what it means to take a wife,
Mm-hmm.
what it means to have a home. Now, I can build a house,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just a structure. It's never a home unless I have taken a wife.
Right.
Okay, so it takes a woman to make me a man.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand?
Mm-hmm.
That is how powerful and important a woman is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, when we look at that part of manhood, becoming a man, therefore, it is important then to understand the importance of rites of passage, and it is also important to understand the importance of women. Okay. Now, this is obviously one of the main ingredients, over and above the fact that as a man,
Mm-hmm.
when you say to your father,
Mm-hmm.
I now want to build a house and I want to take a wife.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that is important there to note in our Zulu culture is that the house that you're building is not your house. It's your father's house. If he's still alive, it's your grandfather's house.
Mm-hmm.
Your house will be built by your children or grandchildren.
Okay.
You understand? So you don't own
Mm-hmm.
the house, even if it's your mother that has built it. You don't own it. It is for your ancestors. So when we say a woman is a child, she's not your child. She's a child of the ancestors. She's come here to
Mm-hmm.
be a child of this household, to help you to build this household so that your children together can build your house.
Mm. So what's
You
the
understand? So
significance of that though, like symbolically and culturally? Why? What is there a philosophical kind of significance behind that idea?
it's more a spiritual significance than anything, because
Right.
we are, remember, when I keep saying we are divine spirits having a divine human experience.
Mm-hmm.
Our ancestors are within us. They are with us. They are us. Let me give you this example so everybody can understand how is it that our ancestors are with us.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of us has a navel,
Mm.
and that navel once connected us to our mother's womb through the
Mm-hmm.
umbilical cord.
Mm-hmm.
Her navel connected her to her mother's womb through the umbilical cord.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how then we become ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
Do you understand? They are part of us and they remain a part of us. So we are then a part of our ancestors and they are part of us. And
Mm-hmm.
as a result, when I build this house,
Mm-hmm.
it is their house. They are in charge. And because of that, I have
Mm-hmm.
a duty to make sure that everything is done accordingly in this household.
Yes,
Because
sir.
it's not my, I will then become an ancestor one day. And when I become an ancestor one day, everything that pertains to this home needs to
Okay.
be in order.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
So you just like our ancestors in Kemet
Mm-hmm.
prepared for the afterlife, you
Mm-hmm.
do the work here to prepare for the afterlife. You
Yes.
do it, even it's done throughout the continent.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
just that Europeans came with religion and
Mm-hmm.
twisted it and made the afterlife something else. We've always believed in the afterlife. We still do. Our culture,
Mm-hmm.
our practice talks about the afterlife. The fact
Mm-hmm.
that I am building my ancestors' home means
Mm-hmm.
that I'm preparing for my afterlife for my children to build my home. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm. Yes,
So
sir.
there's
Yes, sir.
continuity. Yes.
There's a beautiful thing there that I'm pulling out of what you're saying as well, in terms of the fact that being a man, yes, requires
Mm.
you to have a connection and maintain a connection to your ancestors. Yeah,
Yes.
that you cannot be a man unless you retain and have a knowledge of their ancestors and effectively build
Precisely.
upon their work. If like you're literally building on their work, if you're building your father and your grandfather's house, you know,
Yes.
and there's deep wisdom in that.
Yes.
There's very deep wisdom in that. I did cut you, so I don't know if you concluded what you were saying in terms of
No.
yeah.
I'm good. I'm perfectly good.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, good. So in that sense now, so like what would you say then? Traditionally, and we know this may change, yeah. But we're really looking at what are some of the principles and the values and the ideals that we draw from the archetypal manhood rights in Zulu culture that we can use to inform our manhood today. So what would traditionally be some of the primary roles, yeah, of men and manhood, yeah? What function does manhood play in Zulu life and Zulu culture and Zulu tradition, Zulu nationhood?
Okay. Now, over and above the fact that as a man, basically you provide security, you provide protection, you provide discipline, you provide guidance, you provide in terms of food, livestock, shelter. Those are the things that when you say, I love my family, that is what love is. It is a verb, it is a doing word, it is something that you do, okay, in order to cultivate the fruit that is the feeling of love. You've got to work. So, having said that, we do these in our different roles because each one of us is an institution, okay? When you see in English, they talk about an uncle. It doesn't differentiate whether it's a paternal uncle or a maternal uncle. It just says uncle. Whereas in isiZulu, these are institutions. A paternal uncle, ubaba. So my father's brother is my father. You understand? There's no difference. He's still my father. Okay? My mother's brother is umalume, my uncle, my maternal uncle. Umalume.
So
All right?
ubaba and umalume. Yeah?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
I want to encourage people when they're listening here to repeat these Zulu words here. Get your tongue around some Zulu linguistics. Go ahead.
Yes. There are certain things that can only be done by umalume. You know, there are certain things that can only be done by my father's brother. Okay? To the extent that even in terms of their hierarchy, my father's elder brother has certain responsibilities as an institution that if we have, for example, a family gathering, okay, in some instances, he is the one who needs to burn the incense. It cannot be burnt by anybody else. Do you understand? Because that, as an institution, he is the elder who then communicates with the ancestors. All right. Now, even with, for example, umalume, when a girl becomes of age, esemula, she goes and fetches the spear from her mother's brother.
Yes, sir.
Because it is he who says to her, you have become of age. Do you understand? Now, that is also important because umalume is also the one who is instrumental in creating or becoming part of ilobolo, which is incorrectly termed the bride price. Okay, but it is in actual fact the creation of the union, the unity between the families. Now, remember, in our culture, a union is not a union of two individuals only. It is a union of families. It is a union of ancestors. So it is a union of all these institutions. So as a man, it is very important to understand, therefore, your role as umalume, your role as ubaba, your role as ubaba mdala or ubaba mncane, depending on whether you are the older brother or the younger brother.
Right.
Depending ukuthi umalume omdala umalume omncane. You know, because of that, where do you fall in terms of your hierarchy? Were you born before your sister? In which case umalume omdala, or are you younger? In which case umalume omncane?
Right.
And each one has different roles and responsibilities that they can only perform as those institutions. So it's very important, therefore, to understand your role and function. Now, when colonialism came, it destroyed those institutions. So family became mother, father, child.
Yes, sir.
And it cuts off there. Even in terms of benefits, for example, if you have medical insurance, mother, father, child. If you have a life policy, mother, father, child. It does not include the extension of the other members of your family. They are still family. They are not extended family. They are still family. They are institutions that are material to your family, to you. And that is why we have so much of late, because we have gotten rid of these institutions, and the roles that they should be playing have been left vacant. So nobody then guides me as a young person how I should behave around women, how I should conduct myself in public, how I should conduct myself amongst other boys. Nobody guides me. And because of that gap, we tend to do things in a haphazard manner.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You know, I'm extracting from what you're saying. What are the things that I'm getting from what you're saying at the moment? And I'm juxtaposing it to the concept of men and manhood that we have dominating in Western society, which is manhood is very individualistic. Yeah. It's self-defining in terms of me as an individual in relation to things that I acquire. Yeah. If that makes sense. And whereas what you're explaining is that manhood, and I'm focusing on the manhood because today's the subject, but peoplehood in general is relational. Yeah. So I'm a man in relation to my function in the lives of those around me, right? You know what I'm saying? And so my acquisition, my economic acquisition is only worth something in as much as it relates to the people that are around me. So I can't be a man in and of myself. I have to be a man, you know, because of my mother, my father, my wife, you know what I'm saying? My sister and my relationship to my sister's children, my brother and my relationship to my brother's children. I'm getting that. That's beautiful. So that all sounds good, Mkhulu, yeah? And I'm going to be cynical for a moment in a theatrical sense, right? That all sounds very good. It sounds beautiful, yeah? But we're not living in a time of shaka right now. This is 2021. We're in the modern age, right? We have a big screen TV, a mobile phone, and cities whereby we're not living in villages anymore. And you're running a rites of passage program that claims to be, you know, reviving all these Zulu traditions. What relevance does it have? And in your rites of passage program, do you update these principles and these ideas, or is it just trying to get everybody to move back to the village so that we can live, as Shaka did in the 17 and 1800s?
Okay, let's look at evolution in the African sense. Okay, we tend to think that modernity, which is Western principles, we tend to think that that is a form of evolution that we need to subscribe to. Right. And we have forgotten that as Africans, we evolved and we continue to evolve. Now, if you think about the fact that we have, for example, right here in Mpumalanga province in South Africa, we have a place called Inzalo, where the late great Sanusi Credo Mutwa was initiated in 1938, I think it was. Okay? Now, in Inzalo Yelanga, we see our ancestors erected huge rocks to follow the pattern of certain stars. The cardinal points of north, south, east, west are there. And the star system, which in our language we know as Umzingeli. In English, it is known as the Star of Orion, the star system of Orion. We understand that there's an Orion's belt, the three stars across the waist. Okay. Now, when we look at those three stars, we have a representation in terms of those rocks, the placement of those rocks here in Zalwelang. All right. And when our ancestors migrated further north up the Nilotic meridian, they migrated with that up until they reached Kemet, ancient Egypt. Okay, where you see the same representation with the pyramids of Giza, the pyramid of Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure, representing the Orion's belt. Okay, now if you look at how then Egypt has evolved in terms of stone buildings, structures, from the stones, the raw stones that were just placed here. Does that not speak to evolution? Do you understand? So we evolved, all right through the continent. We evolved. Everything that Europeans know now, they learned from Africans. For example, if you look at Imhotep, Imhotep was not just a master builder, but he was also a medical practitioner.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The implements or instruments which Imhotep was using in surgery more than 6,000 years ago are the same instruments that are being used in surgeries today. Okay, I have a friend who is a medical doctor who was in Kemet in December, and she said she saw on the reliefs in Kemet those very same instruments that she uses as a medical doctor. So if you think about that, the fact that our ancestors evolved and they did things in the way that we understand them as Africans, then you understand that we evolve. So when we go through the rites of passage, I am not saying let us be primitive in the manner in which we do our things. But what I am saying is the principles should be there. The principles need to be kept.
Right.
So yes, because it always baffles me when we look at people who say, I will do a white wedding because an indigenous wedding is very primitive. It's outdated.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And then my question becomes, but do you understand how old a white wedding is to begin with? So it is primitive.
Yes.
But
yes,
because it is continuously practiced, it doesn't look like it is primitive at all.
Right.
But it is ancient stuff. It is ancient.
Yes.
It was done way back in the Gregorian areas era and so on. So when we look at that and we look at our own indigenous wedding, why is it that we look down upon our own indigenous wedding?
Yes,
if you look at how the Hindi or the Hindus perform their marriage ceremonies, those ceremonies are ancient ceremonies, but they have evolved and adapted them, and they still have kept those principles.
Okay.
So what I'm effectively saying is we don't have to look at ourselves as being primordial.
Yes.
Because even if there are elements which are primordial, they are certainly not anachronistic. And we need to be aware of that fact and then start to say, how do we then continue the evolution with the African interpretation? How do we do it our way? It doesn't have to be the European way. It shouldn't be the European way. Our ancestors did this evolution the African way. We have the pyramids from mud structures. In fact, the first pyramid was made out of mud bricks. And then they evolved into huge blocks of stone. And then they evolved into how to put those stones in such a way that they didn't need mortar.
Yes, sir. Yes,
you know? So that's evolution in itself. So Africans did evolve. It is a lie to even think it that we are not evolving. We have always evolved. We continue to evolve, but we must get out of our minds this thinking that evolution only makes sense when it comes from Europe or a European. You understand? It is wrong to think that way. Let us look at our own evolution and then look at how do we then evolve in our own way, in our own interpretation.
Give thanks, Baba. I want to just acknowledge the chat for a second. I'm going to ask Mkhulu another question, and then I'm going to open to any interaction that people may have. We are hosting this conversation in anticipation of the event coming up on the 20th of June, entitled Affirming Black Manhood. Mkhulu Mhleli Linda is an elder brother that I wanted to feature on the event, but he will be in pilgrimage during that time. But I figured it would be good for you all to get to bring him live so you can feast off his wellspring of wisdom. And every man that features on the event, like Mkhulu, is actually has a track record of doing work with men. specifically. Yeah, that was a requirement of the event. Yeah, that we wanted men who do work with men that are living what they speak, yeah, at the event. And so Mkhulu is certainly doing that. So I'm gonna ask him one more question about that in a second, but let me just acknowledge the chat because I can see some lively debate and conversation going on. Firstly, thank you to Nature, my brother, for the super chat. We truly appreciate that. Bigging up to my brother M.A. Brown, Mara, Kawana Harris, good to see you, my sister, over there in, is it North or South Carolina? I've forgotten. You know what I'm saying? I believe I did see Baba Luke, man. Let me check if I'm correct. Yes, I did. Yeah, so big up yourself, Baba Luke, man. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you with us. And Baba Luke, man, is of the Lukemans. Yeah, him and his wife are doing some serious work over there in the US of A. Most notably at the moment, the development, they're central to the development of an institution called Black Power Media. So if you're not subscribed to that channel, go and subscribe to that channel. Bigging up my brother TN Zulu, who I'm sure is the reason why there's a lot of debate in the chat. For some background, Mkhulu, brother TN Zulu, as his name suggests, is a Zulu, but he believes that the Zulus are Israelites, and so he doesn't deal with the indigenous spiritual system, if that makes sense. So I suspect that his presence has caused some debate in the chat. No doubt, the brother is very convicted in terms of his Israelite or Christian or that kind of leaning trajectory. Do you know what I'm saying? So yeah, maybe if there's any questions around that, we'll ask them in shortly. But welcome, my brother TN Zulu. You are welcome nonetheless, and we appreciate your presence. And anybody that I may have forgotten, big up to Nyasha. You actually share my second name. My first name is Tafadzwa. And my second name is Nyasha, so we give thanks. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna get to your questions in a second. So do stay tuned. So I'm gonna let some people come live, but also if you want to ask a question, you can post it in the chat. Now, Mkhulu, based upon my last question, how are you using those principles to prepare the young men, yes, who are taken through rites of passage for the challenges of the world that we live in today? Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Because obviously, there were things that were done back in the day because of the material circumstances of back in the day. So how are we developing those principles through your rites of passage work to prepare young men to meet the challenges and solve the problems of today?
Well, if you look at, for example, I'm going to go into a bit of a touchy subject, that of sexual orientation. Okay. Now, there is also an agenda, very sinister agenda, where that is concerned. Okay. And we don't dispute the fact that it does happen that you get transsexual persons naturally. Okay. Persons who are born with either both sexual organs, but those are few and far between. A lot of that is actually sexual preference. Okay. Now, we see a lot of feminization of our boys. We see a lot of masculinization of our girls. Okay. Now, the agenda there is so that when boys are busy with boys and girls are busy with girls, there's no procreation, and therefore the nation doesn't grow. And this also is originated, or homosexually originates from Greece. And it is the Greece primarily who were homosexuals, hence the story of Adam and Eve. Because the Greeks could not understand that anything great could come from a woman. Now, when you think about the original story, the original story of the Nesut Beti or the Pharaoh, Usama Adra Setependra Ramesu Meriamun, yes, whom the Greeks called Ramses, who was praying to the great spirits to alleviate or to take his nation out of famine. Okay, because in those days, kings were not there to be served. Kings were there to serve. So this man was beleaguered and he was in trouble because his nation is going through a tumultuous time, a tough period. And his wife, Shanu, comes to him, takes a fruit from the tree of knowledge, and gives him this fruit and says to him, with this fruit, you will obtain the wisdom with which to rule your nation and take them out of famine, which means plant and have fruit, get communicate with other nations around you to obtain fruit and food so that you can sustain your people and take them out of famine. Now, when Europeans saw a woman give a man a fruit and saying it is a fruit of wisdom, because they were homosexual by nature and they could not understand that anything great can come from a woman, they corrupted that story and then turned it into a story where Eve gave Adam the poisoned apple or the forbidden apple, the forbidden fruit. And as a result, now we are bound to sin, as it were, because of that act. And I'm saying, but hang on, that is not the true story at all. And so now we come back and we say, how do we raise our boys to understand their role and function, to understand that the role is so important that they cannot betray that role, because from that role comes families, from that role comes institutions. So the minute you feminize a boy, you no longer have him, you no longer have the institution of an uncle, you no longer have an institution of ubaba, noma ubaba omncane or ubaba omdala. You no longer have an institution of ubaba wekhaya, the husband.
Okay.
So you are destroying so much just by feminizing a boy child. So, and I want to make this point very clear so that people understand that when I say I don't support homosexuality, it must be very clear that that is not the same as saying I'm homophobic. I'm not afraid of homosexuals. And a phobia is a fear, right? So if a person is claustrophobic, what are they afraid of? Small spaces, isn't it so? Exactly. So a phobia is a fear. I'm not afraid. I talk to them. I engage with them every day. And I engage with them knowing as well that there could be a possible genetic problem there, because it does happen. I don't deny that. Okay? But I want us to separate that from a preference, from what I am. I'm born into this body. I am a man, but I would choose to be a female. That's a choice I'm making. Okay? Now let's understand the choice versus what I am. All right? Now, when I say I don't support the homosexual agenda, I am not homophobic. In as much as homosexuals, by virtue of being homosexuals, don't support the heterosexual agenda. But you don't hear anybody call them heterophobic. Do you understand what I'm saying? They don't support the heterosexual agenda because they're homosexual. But nobody says they're heterophobic. So let's just get the terminology out of the way, because there's no such thing that because I don't support that agenda, I'm afraid of them, I ill-treat them. No, I do not ill-treat homosexuals. Okay? I have friends who are homosexuals, but they understand as well that I don't support that agenda, and I make it clear. And we have that mutual respect, because they understand where I come from. You know, what is my standpoint? So it is not out of hatred, but it is out of the fact that my agenda is that of heterosexuality. And I am saying to these boys, you have a responsibility which is greater than you. You have a duty to perform which is greater than you. And that duty has got nothing to do with passion, but everything to do with virtue. And we must separate the two, virtue from passion. Okay? And I explain this on my website as well, the difference between virtue and passion. Because passion tends to be individualistic. If I love something and I can do it well, but it's all about you,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, versus a virtue which is about the bigger good or the bigger greatness. Okay. Now, when we talk about that aspect of virtue, we are talking about doing something for the good and being good at it, irrespective of whether you like it. It's got nothing to do with liking it. Do you understand the difference? So when we talk about virtue, we talk about, for example, when our ancestors built pyramids, okay, the first pharaoh who started knew very well that he won't live to see the end of that project. But he understood also very well that his son will continue where he left off. And his son also had the same thinking, that he will continue from where his son will continue from where he left off. So we need then to have the generational thinking. Then and that is what our boys, that is what we teach in our boys, to say you need to think generationally. Don't think as far as your nose goes. Don't think for today. Give your life today for your children tomorrow. Do you understand? So that is the principle that we are basing these rites of passage on. And we are saying they are very relevant today, simply because if you are a nation and you don't talk about a future and how you are going to build that future, how you're going to arrive at that future, then you can't really consider yourself a nation, can you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You can't consider yourself a society, can you? What type of a society does not think of its future?
Its future, yes, sir.
We educate our children because we say we're thinking of the future. So we are doing the rites of passage because we're saying we're thinking about the future of ourselves as Africans, not because we are being racist. I'm not preaching racism. I'm not saying let us hate white people. I'm not saying let us hate homosexuals either. But I am saying let us be clear on our agenda and why we need to follow this agenda. That's what I'm saying.
I'm hearing you completely. I think that we need to be clear about the attempt to neutralize the impact and the function of manhood in community, and what it's supposed to mean in community, and develop men, who are able to combat that. I think that's entirely necessary. So I appreciate that, Mkhulu. And we're gonna get to the chat now. We're gonna give you a few minutes, because we don't want to keep Mkhulu too long. It is his birthday. We want to respect that, and his family as well as the fact that we have to save something for the event on the 20th as well. You know what I'm saying? So do stay tuned for that. And if you're watching from South Africa, do get in tune. I'm gonna share the information about the pilgrimage at the end of the show as well, so you can get in touch with Mkhulu and attend that pilgrimage right there. TN Zulu, I see you in the back. I'm gonna get brother MA's question in first. And then we'll see how we go from here. Question for later, Shakara speaks. How is an unmarried man or non-man treated differently to a man of the same age? So obviously earlier, for those who weren't here earlier, Mkhulu was explaining that in the Zulu tradition, a man is not really a man until he's married and has a wife. He's not truly considered to be a man until he's married and has a wife. So if I'm a man who doesn't have a wife and I'm the same age as a man who has a wife, how are we treated differently within the tradition?
We are treated differently. Let me take, for example, I talked about institutions earlier, and I talked about roles and responsibilities. Now, let's say we have an indigenous function, all right? And the elders are sitting in the kraal, having a calabash and discussing an issue that pertains to that function or pertains to their households. Now, an unmarried man cannot participate in such a discussion, because obviously he's unmarried. And we are talking about a discussion where you can't look from outside in. It's an empirical discussion where you need to be in it as a married man to participate in that discussion. So if we are talking about the challenges we have in our households as men, Okay, for example, I've got an erectile dysfunction. Okay, it is a discussion that I can only have with other married men. Okay, I cannot have that discussion with an unmarried man. So that's where the difference is. All right, there are other things pertaining to the house that you know your role and responsibility as a married man that you must perform, that an unmarried man cannot perform. But I'm just giving you an example right now as to what we can do, or what is done as a married man. That is why when the elders are sitting as married men, even if I'm the same age, even if I'm older, I can even have gray hair. Okay, but I am unwelcome to sit with the elders because I haven't taken a wife. What type of discussion am I going to have with men who have women?
But I guess it speaks to your level of responsibility, as in the sense of family is a responsibility.
Yes.
Yeah, and until you've taken on certain responsibilities, you're not qualified to to have certain conversations, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And I understand that it's about a self-development thing. You know, it's and when we're growing as children, we're taught that, right? And until you show me that you're capable of handling this, then we're not going to allow you to go out, to take the bus from here to there by yourself. For example, you know what I'm saying? There's a crude example, but you understand what I mean. It's about a certain level of responsibility. So I get that. I'm going to get back. Yes, sir. I'm going to get back to your chat, the questions in the chat in a second. But we do have my brother TN Zulu. I was going to read a couple of his comments, but he's here, so I'll let him to expand upon his own perspective. Greetings, my brother.
Greetings, Mkhulu, Mjani, Shaka, Mjani, Mkhulu, Mjani.
Siyaphila njani Nkosi yami?
What Mkhulu said.
So yeah, I do have a question. Actually, I want to keep it, within the topic. I don't want to, be rude and take over and divert anything. So
yes,
I have a question though. As a Zulu Christian, I practice, the process of courtship rather than fornication. In the Zulu tradition, what are the customs in terms of keeping virginity and in terms of waiting for marriage? Is it just do what you want, or is there? Because I know within Lobola, if the woman is untouched or is virgin, you have to pay more. So there is some sort of priority in keeping pure for marriage. So what would the Zulu customs be for the man in that same process?
Okay, now let's understand this aspect for a child for a start. When you say you pay more, I just want to get into that so that to contextualize so everybody can understand what that means. We have, in terms of iloboli inkomo zelobolo, the bride price, we have different cows, each of which has its own role or its own function. Okay, kunenkomo kamama leyo kuthiwa ingquthu. That's the first cow. All right. The second kube inkomo kababa ivimba. That's the second. Then kunomqhoyiso, kunomphonso, and there are other cows as well. Okay. Now, when a man takes a girl's virginity, it is understood that he is also taken away the mother's cow, but he has also taken away the father's cow. So when he has to pay damages, he must now repay those cows. So whoever marries the girl now does not pay those two cows. So that's where you come across the expression you've just the distinction you've just made of saying, but you pay less for her. Okay. Now, as a
Sorry,
can
I clarify that, Baba? Are you saying that what the man has done in that instance would be considered a violation of the woman that he has to make amends for, if that makes sense?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying? Okay, go ahead.
Yes. Because it's important to understand as well that it is not a penalty that he is paying just to the family indlu yomnumzane ngoba ufike wadlova esibayeni sikamnumzane. So he went into he desecrated that man's some of the things are difficult to put in English, and I try my best to try and translate into English. But what I mean to say is he has disrespected this household by violating this man's daughter. Okay? But he has also embarrassed his ancestors in doing so. So he must now cleanse. Okay? Now, the difference comes here. The reason why I wanted to contextualize is because I want us to understand that a girl is either under the control of her father or her father's house, or under the control of her husband's house. Not under the control of the husband. Bear in mind what I said earlier, that she is not his child. She's a child of that household. Okay? But he's the head of the house. But bearing in mind that even though he's the head, it doesn't give him free reign to do whatever he pleases. He may not raise his hand. He may not speak to her in a certain way. He may not, you understand, because she is here to help him to build this home. And without her, this home doesn't get built. So we need to understand that. And the reason why he then becomes the one who pays the penalty is because he has betrayed his own birthright of protecting the woman, right? He protects her not because she can't protect herself, but because she's important. I already explained earlier how important a virgin maiden is. So he has violated that which he should be protecting, and that is why he's now paying the damages. I don't know if I'm answering Mr. Zulu's question.
No, you've answered it perfectly. The reason I was asking that is because people will say, oh, you know, it's your Christianity that's making you want to stay pure and wait for marriage and do all these things. But even in African culture, and for example, there's the women practice this kind of like a ceremony, where they check the virginity of the, in Zulu, they do this as well. And even in Zimbabwe, they used to do this. And essentially they check the elasticity, sorry to be graphic, but they check the elasticity of the vagina to check if they've been penetrated. And I've been told that this... Yeah, go on. Sorry.
I just wanted to interject there. I want us to change the terminology a little bit, because we have run into trouble before with the terminology, because people tend to think we mean something else by vaginal testing or checking and the like. Okay, what it is virginity preservation as opposed to testing. So the matrons will go and make sure that the vagina is, or the virginity rather, is preserved. Okay, and they check for the hymen membrane whether it's still intact, which is normal, and a gynecologist could check that. So there's no apparatus that is being put in there or anything, but they would understand, those matrons, what to look for, in as much as a gynecologist would understand what to look for. So these are indigenous gynecologists, if you will, who will understand whether the hymen membrane is still intact, and to say that this girl is still a virgin. Okay, so that's just the terminology that I wanted us to sort of deal with, so that we understand that, because the minute you say checking, then it means maybe it could give an inference.
I understand.
That perhaps there are some instruments being put in there and so on. Yeah.
I have a question about this, but I'm gonna hold it for now, just to get through the panel, because somebody was just here. They seem to have disappeared, but MA is here as well. So let me get to MA and see what contribution he has to make. You there, brother?
Yes, I'm here. Greetings, good evening, everybody. Good evening, Elder.
Greetings.
Yes.
Greetings. Greetings.
I'm looking at the top of the bottom of your neck. You got like a colored garment underneath there somewhere. What's this?
This is a Swati neck dress, which is called itabeshe.
Say again?
Itabeshe.
Itabeshe.
Itabeshe, yes.
You're not getting the click, Emma. You're not getting the click. You have to
I missed the click. One more time. One more time, please.
Itabeshe.
Good one, good, nice. Go ahead.
No, you'll get the hang of it eventually.
Yeah, it's very difficult. But I'm here with my wife. We're both listening and cooking some dinner as well. So we're both enjoying the conversation.
Greetings.
Say hello.
Greetings, everyone.
Greetings, Queen.
So I asked my main question. Already. But I wanted to also. Am I echoing?
No, you're fine, bro. You're fine. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. I wanted to also just touch upon what you said when you were explaining how the currency is exchanged for the wife. And this is something that my father-in-law explained to me as well. My wife is Congolese. And this is kind of a similar way that he explained kind of that compensation, I would call it, I suppose. For the family, as in I'm almost it sounds dread actually, but I'm almost removing a resource from the household. And yeah, so that's the kind of how I understood it to be, and it sounds very similar to what you were explaining in the Zulu culture as well.
Can I just elaborate on what you're saying, so that we can further contextualize and get more clarity on the subject? Mm-hmm. Now, as a father, it is my duty and responsibility to raise my daughter. Okay? I cannot pass on that responsibility to her future groom. Okay? It's my duty to raise. So whether I educate her and she's got 7 degrees, it's my responsibility. It's not his. You see, so I can't make him pay because I have sent her to 7 universities. Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's not so much that you are taking a responsibility away from the house as if you are crippling the house. It is known. I always tell my daughter as well that you are not mine, but you will always be my relative. And by that, what I mean is she is going to leave my house and become a child of another household, where a child of her matrimonial home. So it's expected. So it's not as though that family is going to be taking away a resource from my house, because I can't marry my daughter, can I? Mm-hmm. So it's normal, it's natural that she is going to leave to go and build somebody else's home. Right, okay. Right. So I want us to get away from the compensation type of language, because it is very wrong and it creates the perception when couples have disagreements, and then you hear the man say, "I paid for you." No. It is absolutely wrong.
I apologize.
You were creating relations.
Conversations, yeah.
Yes, you were creating relations. You are going and paying the bride price as a gratitude for them to give you and your family a woman who's going to build your home. That is what it means. And that is how the union is created between the families. It's not that you're paying for her. Right. You're not paying for her, but you are showing gratitude to say, I am grateful that you are giving me a woman who's going to raise my children, take care of my household, and help me to build.
Do you know what I'm getting from this as well? Because I think we have to understand that marriage in indigenous societies was as much about was an economic institution as much as anything else, and so we tend to think of love and marriage in the emotional more than the functional, if that makes sense. So because of that, we're estranged from these exchanges of reciprocity that go on. But MA, was I hearing a confession a minute ago? Was he confessing of some sins just a minute ago?
Yeah, of course.
Right,
in jest, obviously.
In jest, all right, okay. All right. Confession is good for the soul, as they say. I'm sure brother T and Zulu would agree.
Oh no! Don't mention that word.
Right. I'm playing. Right, Mkhulu, I've got a question. Oh, so we've got somebody in the back. But let me throw my question in quickly. Nyasha, are you with us?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, my sister.
Yes,
Thank you for joining us. Do you mind if I throw? Do you mind if I throw in a question before we come to you? Is that okay?
Oh, no problem. Of course,
Thank you.
of course, no problem.
Siyabonga. What's it called? Our thirst for knowledge is back, so I'm gonna jump in before thirst for knowledge. But let me just check. Thirst for knowledge, are you here? Okay, they appear to be here, but I'm gonna mute them anyway, just for now. All right, right. Mkhulu. Now I'm gonna ask you a controversial question based upon some of the controversial things that you have said. Yeah. And I know that you're clarifying a lot, and give thanks for your patience in terms of clarifying certain things because they sound weird, yeah, to many of our ears, right? But it can be said, right? And so I know some people will say that much of what you are saying, it sounds like the woman is a product to be owned. She's owned by her father, and she's owned by her husband's father, and it sounds very like the woman is an object. Yeah, it can sound like that, right? And I'm not saying that that's what you're saying, but I'm saying that I know that there are some people that are listening that may be hearing that. Yeah, and so is that the case? Is the consciousness of the Zulu that the woman is an object? Yeah, and obviously that would produce misogynistic tendencies and misogynistic cultural behavior, right? In terms of how women are treated in the society. And as and where this is the case, are there aspects, in your humble estimation, of our traditions, in particular where the Zulu, do we just do everything our ancestors did because they did it, or in respect of evolution, are we entitled to say, well, actually, we need to evolve out of this and evolve out of that consciously because of whatever? Even on the show that you were discussing with Baba Buntu, he did make the statement that many of our women are suffering, in the name of what people are calling culture. And he actually challenged whether it is actually the authentic culture or not, which I won't go into. But I'm saying that the reality of what he says is true, right? So in these instances, and is, first of all, does what you're saying feed those instances? And if not, how are we training our men within our culture to solve those kinds of problems as well, whereby culture may have been perverted and now women are being oppressed in the name of culture, as opposed to being elevated and treated as they should be?
Okay, let me take you to the point about misogyny and the fact that misogyny is something that did not exist in African culture, and I'll show you an example of why it didn't exist. As a man now, or as a grown adult, I say to my father, cut me a piece of land that I can call my own, okay, where I will raise my family, right? And for let's take it to today's setting, for example, okay, where I say to my dad, I've bought a house in some suburb, okay, and I show him it's a beautiful house, whatever, 5 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, whatever. It's nice, it's beautiful, right? And I say to him, I want you to consecrate that ground, ukuphendula isoy, because he now needs to ukfaga abadala, to in a sense report this house to the ancestors and allow them to come in. Okay, right now. I'm doing the two like this just to show you that the process can still continue in terms of our today's standards of living. But let's take it back in terms of, say, for instance, I'm in the rural area now, and my father has cut me a piece of land. It's got nothing, it's just a piece of land, all right? And if I decide to demarcate it with a fence or secure it with a fence, I do that. But it's just a piece of land.
Yes, sir.
He comes and he consecrates that land for me, right? The very first house that I must build on that land is in Luyabo Gogo, which is the matriarch, the grandmothers,
right,
the ancestral grandmothers.
Right.
Okay, they are the first who need to come in here.
Right.
Now that is very significant.
Yes,
because it shows you just how great our women are. That the very first house that you build is not your own, but their house in your yard. Indlu yogogo, the first ancestors to come into that house are the grandmothers.
Yes.
Do you understand? That is how great women are. So when we say that a woman is either under the control of her father, it is because the father is the head of the household. But he doesn't control her as a possession. He controls her as he does all his children.
Right.
But because a woman is so important that she is part of this house as a girl, she is raised to go and raise someone else's house. So she goes there and she becomes a child of that ancestry, not as an object, but as a unifier and a builder.
Right.
So she's
So
not.
are you saying, just to
she's
clarify,
not a
Mkhulu,
commodity.
just to clarify, Mkhulu, is it
Yeah.
who are the who do the boys belong to, if that makes sense? So if the girls belong to the father and husband's house, who do the boys belong to?
The boys also belong to the father. Remember that the boys are the ones, because we follow the paternal lineage,
Right.
the boys carry the surname.
Okay, so it's a patrilineal society.
It's a patrilineal society. So the boys carry the surname. But the boys also have a duty and a responsibility. Okay, because in there, kukhona indlalifa who will have to inherit the father's household.
Right.
Whilst the others go and they build their own homes. He continues his father's house.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
In Jalif. You understand?
Yes.
So the patrilineal lineage in itself, by virtue of it being patrilineal, means that the boys are always under the father.
Right.
That is why I cannot, as a boy, say at any given time that a woman belongs to me.
Right.
That she is my child. Because it's not my home I'm building. It's my father's home. If he's alive, it's my grandfather's home.
Yes.
You understand? So I still belong to these elders and I'm building their home. My home will be built by my children or grandchildren.
Understood, Mkhulu. Understood. All right. There's a lot there, and even in them in what you said, there's so much more we could unpack. But for the sake of time, let us get to Sister Nyasha to ask her question or make her comment.
Thank you so much, Papa Spears. Are you a Zimbabwean?
Me myself, no. In fact, I'm a born and raised member of an organization called the Al-Kebula Revivalist Movement. One of our founding members is Shona, and so all of the members at the time were learning to speak Shona. So as a result, I have a Shona name, and the spiritual language of the organization is Shona. So most of our prayers are in Shona. Tendai Mwari, the guy Mwazvi, and then Ataura ne Fungwazi Mumuyo Mango, then Zikwene Mwari, and so on and so forth. So forgive my pronunciation, but that's the explanation behind that. Because we're Pan-Africanists, we reclaim all of our African traditions and languages, and so yeah, I love the Shona language.
Wow. Yes, because Nyasha is a Shona name. Okay, yes, I hope I'm not taking too much space because I know it is a man channel. So if I go off topic, please let me know.
No problem,
yes.
My sister.
My question was, on this, I have a problem, maybe it sounds great for African men, but for me, because we have a high number of African women being raped, she's the number one woman being raped globally, especially in South Africa and in Zimbabwe, even molestation. So I have a problem with this holy woman talk. And this is also what I fight against on, because I do believe that being holy is more than just your, what you have. Yes, yeah, absolutely. It is, women should understand we are bigger than that. But I know that African men tend to, I don't know where that has come from. And I think those are secret men talks that I would never know. Because, and also calling of the rain, even widow women can do that too. So it's not just only, the virgin woman, because it can be taken any time. These are the times that we are living in, and I know a lot of women who experienced that. And I remember even having a situation with a woman, but she was from Kenya. And she said something, she said to me, we had an quarrel together, and she said to me something that really hurt me. I am a real woman because I am mutilated and I'm a virgin. You are not. So she based her being a womanhood. Okay. Yes, and I find that this is very, very problematic. And also, it sounds so great what Baba Linda is saying. It's so great theoretically. But I wish, we can have some practical examples that this is not how things, are placed. And I think also we need also different men from different cultures. I know in the Akan culture, women can keep their name. And I do believe in women keeping their family and clan names.
Yes.
In Akan culture, women never give up their name. You never, as a woman, give up your name. Even in the Venda culture, the man moves to the woman because they say if the woman goes to the man's family because of experience of abuse from the mother-in-law, that is happening a lot in Zimbabwe. And we have women moving to the man's house, being abused by the man's mother. Woman on woman violence is real. So I really wish we can have different cultures, African cultures, with women. Like there is not just one way of do African culture. The Zulu culture is one way we can do things, but there are a lot of things we can do. Like I do not promote women giving up their name. I do believe women always keep their name. This is what the Akan culture in Ghana, they do believe in that.
Yeah. Thank you for that,
absolutely.
sister. And you haven't gone off topic at all, so don't feel no way about what you have brought to the conversation, especially when you discuss rape. Rape is an issue that only men can really solve. Yeah, if we are the perpetrators of it, it is our responsibility to solve it. And I am using the collective pronoun "our." Yeah, that includes
and
men who are not.
And you are correct.
Right?
You are correct in using that pronoun as well.
Yes, sir. Because I'm emphasizing that includes men who are not perpetrators. It is our responsibility to solve that problem.
Yes. Which is why we do the kind of work that we do. Yes.
Right. Exactly. So I'm going to come to you, Mkhulu. I just wanted to affirm something that the sister said, though. Obviously, Mkhulu is coming from a Zulu cultural perspective, which is why we're emphasizing the Zulu. But I agree with what my sister is saying in a sense of that especially if looking at it from a cultural Pan-African perspective, there's so much that we as African people have to learn from each other. Oftentimes, when we want solutions to things, we feel like we have to look outside of ourselves, and which is what Mkhulu was saying earlier, that we assume that modernization is westernization. We look to Europe to improve and to develop. But there are many things that the Akan can learn from the Zulu, and the Zulu can learn from the Akan, and all can learn from the Bakongo and the Kikuyu, and so on. And finally, Mkhulu, I'm putting this to you in relation to what the sister has said, because there are a number of cultures, for example, the Kikuyu, in Kenya, that were once matrifocal and matrilineal, that became patrifocal and patrilineal at a certain point in time. And for some people, some people suggest that threw off or created some imbalances in certain instances in the gender dynamic. Yeah, I don't know if you have an opinion on that, in particular from a Zulu perspective, but please respond to our sister. And what she said.
I do. You see, I understand the concerns Sister Nyasha is raising, and what I would like to put forward in terms of contextualizing this type of discussion is that I am talking about the Zulu that I am, but I am not denigrating any other African culture. And I'm not saying that my culture is better than any other African culture. I'm merely just talking about who I am as a Zulu man and my cultural basis.
Yes,
now, with respect to the when we talk about girls being holy, you now need to contextualize and understand from a Zulu cultural background what that means. Why is a virgin maiden holy? And yes, you're quite right. A widow can also pray for rain. An elderly woman, who in most cases with us Zulus, it would be an elderly woman who has gone through menopause, okay, who would take on that responsibility. Now, that's also a rite of passage. So you must understand that we have different stages for us to do different things, for us to do different functions, okay? A married woman, for example, is at a different stage, in as much as a married man is at a different stage, in as much as a boy who herds cattle is at a different stage, in as much as a virgin maiden is at a different stage. So it is these stages which inculcate in themselves the rites of passage, which means at that particular stage, you have your role and function, which is different to when you get to another stage or a certain level. So let's not mix those in terms of our modern society, because now we tend not to observe any of that. We just, a woman is a woman. And I'm saying, but we have different stages, okay? Now, and functions. Now, when we look at the surname, in Zulu culture, a woman never loses her surname. She takes on the man's name, but she's always referred to by her father's name, her father's surname. Umas Banban. You will see. I don't know if you've followed any of I wouldn't say politics, but if you had to notice how they were referring to the former president's wives, for example, the former president being Jacob Zuma, they would always refer to Umakhumalo, Uma Dlamini. Right now we have a minister, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Okay, even without the double barrel surname, she's still referred to as Uma Dlamini, her maiden name. So they always keep their maiden names, but they take on the name of the family into which they marry. So a woman never ever loses her name. And as a man, by the way, she never even loses her ancestors, because as a man, when she marries into my home, in my yard, I build a house for her ancestors here in my yard. And we put her ancestors here. We bring them over here. So they are part of this household. So at no stage is she coming in isolation. So we need to just understand culturally how we do certain things so that we are not lost in terms of why certain things are done in isiZulu. And it's not culturally fair to also compare what happens in isiZulu and what happens in Xhosa, what happens in Swati, what happens in Kikuyu, because we are different. There are common threads, yes, but we are different in terms of who we are and what our spirituality was about at that instant. Because it is the change in our spirituality that changed in the way, because firstly, spirituality is the original. It has always been there, right? It is the source of it all, source of everything, source of me, okay, source of you, source of the plant, source of the animal, okay? Now, from that comes myself as a person, as a human being. From that, as a part of a society, we then understand spiritual interpretation in terms of culture. So we then our spirituality informs our culture, all right? And our culture then informs our belief systems, which then become ritualized and form a religion. So then we will tell you in Zulu culture, but because we don't necessarily differentiate culture from religion as Africans, a lot of the time, culture is part of the ritualistic conduct, because that is what a religion is. It's rituals, it's ritualistic. Okay, so when we then talk about religion and culture in African in the African context, we tend to talk about one and the same thing to a certain extent, because culture is also about practices. Okay, religion is also about practices, but religion is more about practices because, or rather, religion is viewed as religion more so because it puts in the spirituality element a lot more. But as an African, your life is a spiritual one anyway. The fact that you are, by virtue of your birthright as a boy, protect a girl is a spiritual thing. It's not your, because if you violate her, you are not violating her in the physical. You are also violating her spiritually. You are violating her family spiritually. You're embarrassing your ancestors. And that's a spiritual thing. That is why, therefore, when you pay the penalty, on your side is to cleanse your ancestors, to cleanse the embarrassment that you have imposed on your ancestors, and also to cleanse and apologize to the family whose daughter you have violated, whose ancestors you have violated. So it is a spiritual thing right through. So when we talk about a girl being holy, we must, that is why I always say as well, that when we have these discussions, take off your Eurocentric cap, because we are talking about African customs, customary law. We need to think as our ancestors thought, and not think of ourselves in Eurocentric terms, because then we run into trouble. Then we start thinking,
I will say this:
if a girl is holy, she's an object.
No, I understand what you're saying. I will say though that it's probably difficult when we use words like holy, only because of the connotations that it has within the Eurocentric Judeo-Christian framework, if that makes sense. So maybe we need to just use the Zulu. I don't know, but I get why that would come up, because of we're using English, and in English, it has a certain connotation associated with it, if that makes sense. But I do.
It's a bit difficult. Yeah.
Yes, I know. I agree.
Difficult to directly translate into English. Yeah,
I understand. But I want to push you more on what the sister was asking though, in terms of like down to earth, real life examples, and particularly in terms of gender abuse and sexual abuse and rape. Yeah. In terms of how the discussion that we're having and the work that you're doing with young men, in terms of bringing them into manhood, provides any solutions, if any, in relation to those issues. Are we producing young men who are clear on matters of sexual violence and rape? Are we producing the kinds of men who are going to hold other men accountable for violations in that regard? And I think that's kind of where the sister was going with her question. So I'm just going to reinforce that if you're able to do with that.
Yes, the rites of passage are especially important in that regard, because when a boy cannot understand, for example, how to conduct himself when he is among his sisters, he is not going to be able to conduct himself when he is with his wife. So if your son plays with his sister, okay, and she cries, he makes her cry, he beats her, he needs to understand that that is not, because it starts right there. You know, so if he understands how to conduct himself with his sisters, how to talk to his sisters, he then begins to learn how to talk to his wife. But also, I always make this example, which is also very important, because here we also teach men. I always say to men that the way you love your wife teaches your daughter how she should be loved. The way you love your wife teaches your son how he should love. So in other words, you need to be exemplary to the point where your daughter understands that nobody should raise a hand against her. Your son needs to understand that he does not have any authority to raise a hand against any woman under any circumstances. So those are the things that we are inculcating right now. We are teaching that. You see, So it's very important. These rites of passage are very relevant, and they are very important because these are the principles that they come with.
Yeah. And I guess that because I've been involved in rites of passage programs in the UK, and I know, and I'm sure you can relate to this in the sense of the fact that oftentimes the impact that you're having is much smaller than you like it to be, if that makes sense, because there's a whole society that is acculturating young men in certain ways, and we, with very small resources, are trying to inculcate different values and battling against a whole mass media, society, legal system and economic system that is promoting different ideas and different values, and it can be an uphill struggle. And so I think that's a lot of the reason why a lot of what you're saying sounds theoretical to the sister. If I may, my sister, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's partly because oftentimes the impact of what is being done is not necessarily being felt by maybe the majority of the women in the community. The majority of the women are dealing with men who have not been through these rites of passage programs, you know what I'm saying? Or, you know what I mean? Or who are violating the principles that they were taught during their rites of passage program. You know what I'm saying? So, it is a significant problem. All I can offer for that is that the solution is in this work. It is in the training of young men. And we need to find ways of maximizing that, in terms of, and I guess it requires us to rebuild those communities that have been destroyed throughout our history, and our sojourn through colonialism and neo-colonialism. But these conversations are ongoing. My sister, are you still with us? Sister
thank you so much, Pastor Men, for taking. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, sister. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for all of you to taking your time to answer. My question. It is the work that I have to do on myself, on with other women to rebuild back the confident and feeling, wholly again, because I do, a lot of women like me do not feel, and to just say you are only virgin at this time, but you have been molested. I don't know. I understand Baba Linda, but I think if we can build pyramids and facilitation for that, because women use those things to be a woman. Women
Sorry, sister, you're cracking up here. Sister Nyasha, sorry, sister,
I'm sorry.
Cracking up a bit. No, yes? It's not a problem. Just rewind like 2 sentences, and come again.
Okay. I think what I wanted to say is a woman use those rites of passages to abuse other women. Like telling other women, I'm better than you because I'm so-and-so. And that's why, maybe those women can call reigns, but I have a different opinion. I believe your character is what at the end of the day counts. Not that, because the life of a woman is so complicated. It is so complicated that even when I hear men say those other women who go and, and do those virginity, I know Baba Linda explained it. I still believe that there are a lot of things that we need to look at. Number one, our food. We have girls who get their menstruation at the age of 8 and 9. And of course, they start very early having those feelings. And we as the community, we have not responded to that. Number two, our television is so sexualized. We have a women who want attention, who want to feel loved. And if I want love from a man, what do? We all know what to do. This is what men react to. So I don't like this kind of, because like I say, it's very complicated. Things are not black and white always. So when we have a woman who are 13, who already had, sex, it could be a lot of things that's been happening in this woman, in this girl life. And I'm speaking from experience here. I'm not there. I don't do theory. Those are real experience. There could be a lot of things that's been happening before, and I believe also, virginity is also a man's work. If we live in a society where women are so vulnerable of lack of food, lack of economic disadvantages, women are very vulnerable to other men. Everyone knows this. And it's not rocket science. A man from outside can come and rape our women, or if you want this, do you want money? You know what? Come with me in the backside. Do you want some money? Are you hungry? I give you a bread. Come on, open your legs. So I don't know.
Nyasha, that's exactly why rites of passage are important for both girls and boys, and it doesn't help just to raise the girls that way, to take care of, because in the rites of passage they also look at diet, they also look at what you consume on television, they also it's a rigorous process. It's not, I don't know if if you have, perhaps at some stage we could also do this, where I have women matrons who also do rites of passages for girls,
Right,
because then they can explain to you that it's not just about checking to see that her virginity is preserved. It's teaching them certain things. It's a whole process of upbringing, just as we are upbringing these boys so that they don't turn into rapists tomorrow, they don't turn into abusers tomorrow, they don't turn into misogynists tomorrow. So that's the whole process, and it's a very practical one. We're not talking theory, even though right now it seems like I'm talking theory, but it's the actual work that we are doing by raising our boy children this way, by raising our girl children this way, by having these meetings between ourselves as men, so that we teach each other how to then catch up, those of us who didn't have the opportunity to go through rites of passage, how to catch up in this modern era, so that we understand that, okay, but this is how we need to behave in our homes, this is how we need to treat our women. And it doesn't mean that I'm perfect, I know it all. I don't. I still learn a lot. I learn every day. You understand? I learn every single day. I learn from my children as well. My daughter teaches me, my son teaches me, all right? My companion teaches me that this is what I need to do. Yes. Okay, so we learn every day and we grow every day. So what you are talking about, Sister Nyasha, about using the rites of passage in this way, that automatically says to me that there is a breakdown in terms of the institutions, and there is a lack of understanding of what a rite of passage is. It's not about, because I went to such and such, I am better than. That is not a rite of passage, or rather, that's not the purpose for a rite of passage. The purpose for a rite of passage is so that it teaches you how you need to conduct yourself and your household ultimately. So we must not abuse our systems in that way, to treat each other as though we are better than. I have learned what I have learned. Okay, I'm sharing this knowledge, but I'm not sharing it because I think I'm better than anybody. And I've just clarified that I'm just speaking merely from a cultural background that I know, but that does not suggest in any way that my cultural background is bigger than any other or is better than any other. And so the minute we start getting rid of that bad behavior of thinking we are better than, simply because you have a little bit of knowledge, you get a little bit of knowledge, now suddenly you think you're better than. We need to get rid of that. It doesn't work. We need to continuously learn, continuously understand each other, and continuously build our institutions, because when we have institutions, then we will get away from this type of talk to say, I am better than you because of.
Yes, sir.
How about saying, listen, I think we could benefit if you could partake in this, or if you could do X, Y, Z, or if I can take, just like, for example, when you meet somebody who has a bit of a challenge mentally and you say, maybe if you see a psychologist, you could get help. If you see a therapist, you could get help. If you see a doctor, you could get help. How about if you see a matron, you could get help. If you see a ubaba njengami, you could get help. If you see an indigenous healer, you could get help. You know, instead of saying, oh, I'm in a better position than you. You are not building anything. You are not helping anyone. And the idea here is to build each other as Africans and to help each other as Africans. So we need to then think about that. It's not, you see, when I talk about virtue versus passion, I'm talking about virtue because virtue is selfless. It's not about me. Passion is about me, what I love, what I desire, what I can do, what I'm good at. Virtue is about what is good for the community, what is good for everybody, what is good out there, not for me. So if I see that a colleague of mine has a bit of a shortfall or a shortcoming, and I think I can help, then it's not for me to say, yeah, but I'm better. It's for me to say, listen, I don't have all the answers, but can we try this? Can we look at this way? And then we grow from that point. Do you understand, Sister Nyasha?
Yes, sir. My sister, I don't want to disrupt the flow of your conversation, but I do want to move on if I may. But thank you, because you have brought something necessary, to the conversation. And I think, Mkhulu, the part of this is we have to come to terms with, even those of us who promote and project our culture and our spirituality as a solutionary force among our people, we also have to come to terms with the extent to which a lot of our institutions have been broken down and corrupted because of the breakdown. And so even in promoting those institutions, I want to say bye to Sister Nyasha, but she's back. She's gone again. Well, what's it called? But yeah, even in promoting the institutions, we've got a lot of repairing to do at the same time. And I think that's probably another conversation for another time. So I'm tempted to go down that road, but I'm going to resist the temptation. So I can, because a couple of the brothers have a couple of comments that they want to make. We haven't got to Thirst for Knowledge yet, and I want to wrap up the show and respect your time on your birthday as well. So you've been gracious, so we thank you. Thirst for Knowledge, you've been patient. Are you with us?
I am with you. I am. Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Good evening, Thirst for Knowledge. Another sister. Thank you very much for joining us.
No problem at all. This is actually my first time actually being a part of or listening to your show. So I'm actually really amazed, and all I can say is keep going. I don't really have much to share other than the fact that this is an amazing platform, and that both of you as my brothers and as black men, I commend you, because you don't have to speak about things like this. It may not be in vogue at the moment, especially when it's directed to the black community. So sorry, I'm just parking. So at the moment, I'm just listening because I want to learn. Nothing or no one people can have a perfect system. But the thing is, I appreciate us being able to have a forum where we can talk and we can put forth ideas, we can learn about each other's cultures, because I'd rather be learning about the various nuances and differences within culture, even if many modern people may not be following the original foundation. So that I can learn more about my own people, because we are one people, but we are diverse. And so, just like the name described, I'm thirsting for more. I want to know more about my people other than slavery and the white savior. I want to know about us as a people, as individuals. I want to know about all of the fine details to patchwork, So all I can say is thank you so much.
Thank you, my sister, for that. I don't know if you dropped off deliberately or by accident, but appreciate.
I think it's by accident.
Yeah. But feel free to come back. I appreciate the encouragement, and this is what this is about. Yeah, when we host an event called Affirming Black Manhood, we're not doing so because we have all the solutions. Yeah, and this is the model for manhood that we must all take on. It's a conversation. that men need to be engaged in. Yeah. And there are some solutions in these conversations, and there's spaces for brothers to challenge other brothers about the kinds of manhood that we are representing, and making that better for the sake of our communities, our families, and our nationhood. Yeah. And so that's the purpose of the event. Oftentimes we take it for granted that we are men because we have testicles and penis, and maybe a 6-figure income, and a big car. But what is that manifesting in our communities? And I think that is the conversation that we're trying to engage in at the moment. So it's not even incumbent upon you that you agree with everything that Mkhulu has said. Understanding is often more important than agreement. Yeah.
Yes.
And so once we have that understanding, then we have a foundation from which to develop. My brothers on the panel have a comment each to make, and then we're going to wrap up the show. I have one question in the chat that I'm going to get to because I promised the sister that I would ask it, and then we're going to wrap up the show. Yeah. So I believe TN Zulu was first, and then Brother M.A.
Thank you, Brother Shaka. Yeah, my question to you, Mkhulu, is I've been studying the migrations of the Bantu people for some time now. I've also been looking into the origins of the Nguni. And there's many theories. Some say that they came through the Bantu expansion in West Africa. Some say that they originated in the Nile Valley civilization, southward of Egypt. But there's also some that are saying that they might actually have possible origins in far northeast Africa, possibly even the Levant region, which is the region known today as Canaan or Israel. I know that one might sound a bit weird to you, but from your studies, where do you trace the origins of the Zulu and the Nguni people?
Okay.
TN Zulu brought the Hebrew Israelite hot sauce to the conversation.
You know how to slip that in, Shaka.
I knew how to bring it, bro. It's all right. I was waiting for it, and I suspect that certain yardies in the chat might have influenced this as well. So big up to my yardie them. You know who you are in the chat that are freaking TN Zulu and these things. But go ahead, Mkhulu. Are the Zulu really Hebrews? That's the question.
No, no. Here's the thing. When we look at the migration of Africans throughout the continent, because there was continuous movement, in terms of the studies conducted by Dr. Theophile Obenga, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, the origin of all man, and by the way, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop had 5 doctoral degrees. He was a physicist. Okay, this is a scientist, an African scientist we're talking about. So he did scientific work, not thumbsuck, scientific work. Okay, scientifically, he's given us a study that mankind originates from the Great Lakes region and migrated all over the continent, southwards, up towards the north, and so on, right? So Abatwa migrated south, and we still have Abatwa right here, okay, which I said earlier, they are known as the Bushmen, incorrectly so, okay, and the Hottentot, incorrectly so, but Abatwa Laba that are still here, okay? Now, when Abatwa came here, they also developed, and they also there's what you call genetic mutation. All right. So because of the areas that we are in, through a process of genetic mutation, our bodies change. So what that means is when you see Abatwa here with squinted eyes, is because when they came across the desert and the harsh sandy wind would get into the eyes, so that forced them to almost close their eyes to prevent the sand from coming into their eyes. Now, what happened then genetically is that their bodies took on that and passed it on to the next generation. So the next generation is then born automatically like that, but it doesn't mean that it changes who they are. Okay, we've got the same thing in Japan, for example, the phenotype. We've got those Africans who went over to that area have also changed structurally. genetic mutation. We have the Europeans who were actually Africans who were caught in the Ice Age, and they lost the texture of their hair because they didn't need it. The body gets rid of what it doesn't need. They lost the pigmentation because they didn't need the melanin for the sun. They were caught in an Ice Age over a 2,000-year period. So they lost that. The noses sharpened and became thinner to protect against the harsh, cold air that they were breathing in that environment. So they didn't need, the body lost what it didn't need then, and genetic mutation took place. So genetic mutation took place right around the continent as well, and all over the world where the black man went, because it was black man who went all over the world. And what then happened is, when you look at the migration, you must look at the different periods, because there was a forwards and backwards movement of different eras, of different people who are actually the same people, but they move from one area to the other. They move because of competition for food and land and so on, cattle and the like. And you will see very similar characteristics, for example, between the Maasai and the Zulu. We both have an avid love for cattle, an avid love for land, an avid love for culture, deep-rooted culture, ritualistic conduct. There are certain things that we do that are particular to our to ourselves as Maasai, as Zulu. We are both warriors. The men are warriors. In our Zulu culture, we raise our boys as warriors as well. That's part of what the rites of passage is about. My great-grandfather, for example, fought in the Bambata Rebellion. We are warriors. We are raised that way. We are born that way. So it's a cultural thing. But you can see how it migrates. You can see, I spoke earlier about King Gungunyani, whose people moved further down from the Mozambique area, the Shai area, moved further down into the south and became the Zulu nation. So we were part of the greater Zimbabwe, the greater Mwenu Mutapa area. Okay, we were warriors in the Mwenu Mutapa kingdom. Okay, even the ancestry, the great spirits that we now call Amandawe, who then fought until they went into the sea and threw themselves into the sea, because they would rather drown in the sea than accept defeat. That is why when you are taken over by the spirit of Amandawe, they are water spirits, because they ended up in the water, and you become that also. You take on that strength, Samandawe, that resilience, that refusal to back down, that fighting spirit. So the migration, you would have to understand in terms of periods, who migrated at which time and where did they migrate and what was going on during the time. Because remember, I'll take, for example, the Libombo bone from Swaziland, which was the first calculator or the first calendar, where our ancestors here started telling the time, started understanding from the Libombo bone how to calculate. When they migrated northwards along the Nilotic meridian, okay, which is the original meridian.
Mkhulu, just as a point of reference, the Libombo bone is like, what's it, 40,000 years? I'm forgetting the actual. Let me Google it quickly. But it's old, yeah, because
it's old. Yes.
Initially, people thought that
it's older than the Shango bone.
The Shango bone, which is 20,000 years.
Yes, it's older than the Shango bone.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
So what happened is, when they migrated with the Libombo bone, when they got to Congo, it developed into the Shango bone. All right, and when the migration continued further northward and got to Kemet, it became the Tekken, or what is known as the obelisk. Okay, so you see how the migration also had an influence in terms of the progression and the evolution, how things changed. Because remember, Kemet is to Africa what the Greco-Roman Empire is to Europe. Okay, Kemet was a place of storage and perfection. So when they migrate, that is why Kemet includes everybody. All Africans are represented in Kemet. The Congolese are represented in Kemet. The Ethiopians, the Sudanese, the Malian people, the Dogon people, the Dogons, the Basotho. That is why Medunete can be understood in any African language, okay? Because it is a composite of all Africans.
What
You
about the
understand? So
Shemites?
we have pyramids right here in South Africa. It started right here.
What about the Shemites?
We have pyramids right here. You see, now, let's talk about the difference between...
Sorry, Mkhulu. Just a quick one. I was correct. The Lubombo bone is back between 43 and 44.
Yes.
45,000 years old. Yeah.
Yes.
This is
yes.
Point.
It's older than the Shango bone. Yes. Now let's look at the biblical history, which is not actual history. We must also understand myth versus scientific research. Okay. Now, in terms of the biblical history, it spans from the Rus, the Russians, right across Europe and the north part of Africa, until it gets to Britain. Okay, the world that is spoken about in the Bible encompasses that world. That was the known world in the biblical era. Okay, it doesn't talk about the southern part of the continent of Africa. It doesn't talk about Australia. It doesn't talk about South America. Do you understand? It only talks about that area. Okay. Now,
if you're reading the book of
I'll tell you where I'm coming with this, because when we look at that part, okay, we talk about in the Bible the descendants of Ham, Shem, and Japheth. So you have the Japhites, the Shemites, the Hamites. Okay, it doesn't talk about Abattoir. It doesn't talk about the Dogon. It doesn't talk about the Kikuyu. Do you understand? So it's as if religion, Abrahamic religion, was waiting, or rather, the world was waiting for Abrahamic religion to come into being. Now,
can I respond?
Africans, just give me a second. Africans are much, much older than that era, because remember, the Bible actually comes from what Abattoir wrote, because if we go back, the very first people to write anything down were Abattoir. They were the first one to write anything theosophical, okay? Anywhere in the world. That is anywhere in the world, and that has been scientific. There are scholars who have studied this. Dr. Ben Yochanan, Yusuf Ben Yochanan talks about this. Dr. John Henry Clark talks about this. You have Sheikh Anta Diop talking about this. Theophilo Benga talking about this. These are scientific studies. Now, the first people who wrote anything were Abattoir. From the theosophical writings of Abattoir, when the first king of Kemet of Egypt formed the kingdom, he then took these writings and they became what the writings that we now know in terms of the Hermetic texts, in terms of the pyramid texts, in terms of the tombs, in terms of the papyri. Okay? Now, when Alexander the Horrible invaded Kemet and the Ptolemaic era started, it was Ptolemy Philadelphus who then took the Hermetic texts, the pyramid texts, the tomb texts, and the papyri to write or to commission the first Jewish Bible. Okay, from that came the Septuagint Bible. So I think about 200 years after that came the Septuagint Bible. But effectively, he was the one who created the first Bible. From that first Bible, the first book that was actually written, okay, was Exodus, and then came Genesis. Now, you couldn't possibly write about how you get out of a place before you get into a place, which is my first contradiction right there in terms of that. But it also goes to
am I allowed to respond? Sorry,
yes, you respond.
And you're gonna, I know, but you get a brief opportunity to respond, brother.
Yeah, just a second, because
it's just like he's making a lot of points, Shaka. You know what I mean? And it's like,
but hold on, he's the guest, isn't he? You notice I'm not even
I understand. So, yeah, that's a
all right.
Point.
So all right. So finish, please.
Sorry, So from that, you must understand that the first Jew, Abraham or Abraham, came after that period. Okay, and so before then there was no such thing as Hamite, Japhite, Shemite. There was no such thing. There were Africans. Okay, and from those Africans came these writings. But also you must take into consideration how those writings also found their way into the original Christians, right, who were from the Ethiopian region, okay, the Eritrean Ethiopian region, okay, and those were even the Gnostics came from that period, but they were not called Christians then, all right. But monotheism developed also from I think it was Pentheus and Boethius, the Egyptians, okay, the Egyptians in the island of Philae in Egypt, in Kemet. That's the idea of monotheism, where it came from. So before then, there was no such thing, and before that, in actual fact, that is what gave rise to what you understand as Christianity right now, with monotheism. Okay, but also it was misinterpreted because Africans did not believe that they were gods or a god. We believed in divinity. We were one with nature. We were one with animals, trees. That is why Ubuntu says, "I am because you are. I am because the tree is. I am because the air is. I am because the bird is." We are one with nature. We are divine spiritual beings having a divine human experience. So that is what I'm talking about. So let's not talk religion and make it history and make it factual. Because first of all, not a single person in the Bible ever lived. Not a single person. Okay, not Moses, he never existed. Not John, not Abraham, not anybody in the Bible. You couldn't show me a single grave of anybody in the Bible because they didn't exist. Even the Immaculate Conception, the story of Jesus, okay, the Immaculate Conception is 4,000 years older than Jesus. And it is taken from the conception of Heru by Osar and Oset in Kemet. So we need to look at what is fact versus what is myth and fiction. I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you very much, Mkhulu. I'll give you a brief response, Brother Zulu.
I understand this time, Jacob. I wish we could have a show like this in the future.
Another show, bro. We'll go into it because I was saying another show.
Thank you, brother. But I'll be very short, I promise. Yes, there's 3 points I want to quickly counteract that he made. The first point was he made a point of the Dogons not mentioned in the Bible. You know, various tribes are not mentioned in the Bible. It only speaks about a certain region in an unknown world. There's an error in that because the Bible is not unique in that aspect of only mentioning a certain area of the world. Most people in that time, including Egypt, including Sumer, including the Greeks, only had a limited knowledge of the whole world in terms of the continents. Yes, there are stories of maybe Egyptians going to the Americas, or going to other parts within Africa. But if you look at most of the ancient maps, it wasn't how it is today. They didn't have a full understanding of all the continents across the board. This is all people during that time. So to make that exclusive to the Bible is a bit disingenuous. Secondly, the book of Genesis describing Noah's sons isn't going to detail the Dogon, because the Dogon is a later tribe of the Hamite stock. It's going to mention the originator or the ancestor of these people today in Africa. It's not going to mention the people there today. It's going to mention the ancestor of these people. So of course you won't find Dogon in Genesis, because they weren't Dogon, they were Hamites, they were Cushites, they were Egyptians, they were this, they were that. You know what I mean? They wouldn't have been called Dogon 20,000 years ago. So that's not even a good point, Mkhulu, I'm sorry. Third point that you made is that, can I just finish my point? Because you made a lot of points, yeah? Another point that you made, you mentioned something about the migrations of the Bantus and the Khoisan, and you mentioned a lot of appears from what I heard you earlier, speaking of from the evolutionary model, speaking about adaptation. These concepts, I don't know if you're aware, they're not actually African concepts. These evolutionary model concepts are westernized concepts on how people around the world dispersed and evolved. This isn't our concepts. So to say that I'm speaking myth and you're speaking fact because you're drawing upon westernized concepts doesn't actually validate what you're saying. Because they're the same people that would say that melanated skin is a result of apes coming down from trees and walking on the ground. So a lot, they don't even admit that we are the original type of human. They will give us, oh, you guys, you guys came down from trees and you started walking on the Sahara, the savannah, and then your hair fell off, and then you started growing dark skin. This is what they say. So even within the evolutionary model, it's racist. If you read Charles Darwin's book on the human races, the Negro is the least evolved. So if you're going to draw on these concepts to try and make my concept seem mythical, then you need to look into those concepts because you'll see that they're actually anti-African and racist. Finally,
my final point.
Please, I beg you. My final point. You mentioned about the Septuagint. Maybe you've not looked into biblical archaeology or biblical manuscripts. There's numerous manuscripts, numerous archaeology proving the existence of the biblical patriarchs. There's manuscripts that predates the Septuagint. You have the Silver Scrolls, which was written during the time of the Babylonian capture. And you have various writings in segments, not the full book, of course, but in segments that prove that these books existed. Secondly, to talk about, where's the graves? Where's this? None of them existed. There's numerous archaeological findings, even within Kemet, that prove the Hebrews not only were there, but were a civilization within its own right. You have the Heights of David by Pharaoh Shishak, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is a recent finding in biblical archaeology, proving the existence of King David, proving the existence of Israel. You also have the Meneptep Stele. You also have the Moabite stone. You've also got the Shashu of Yahoo, which is also found in Kemet. So please, my brother, when you're speaking on there being no existence of the patriarchs and all this mythical stuff, please be informed, because people like me who are Christian are listening. There's evidence actually supporting the Bible, but it seems to me that there's an emotional hate towards the Bible coming from Pan-Africanists, and I don't know where this is coming from, personally. Okay, but I'm done. Thank you.
Let's get one point straight. I am of Zulu emanation. Okay. I don't understand whether that says anything about being Pan-Africanist. What I do understand is I'm an African who seeks to get involved with other Africans because I love the fact that I'm an African. I'm of Zulu emanation, and I love the fact that, or I acknowledge the fact that my people didn't emerge out of a stone. We are part of the greater continent. Secondly, there's no emotional hate of anything. I'm just speaking to myself as an African and what I understand from what I have read. Now, I think you must have misunderstood what I've said or misheard what I've said, because I didn't quote Charles Darwin. I quoted Sheikh Anta Diop, who is an African physicist. Okay, I did not quote any European archaeologist, anthropologist, or scientist. I quoted our own scientists, our own archaeologists, people who have done this research from an African perspective and who have disproven. For example, Sheikh Anta Diop in 1960 in the conference in Cairo disproved the work that was done by Charles Darwin. And that is why I am saying that his scientific research shows that we are the original man originating out of the Great Lakes region. I did not talk about us coming down from trees like apes. So I think you've misunderstood me. But be that as it may, mine is not to fight here with anybody. Mine is just to understand, or rather to speak from the basis through my understanding from what I have studied. Okay. Now, when I talk about Abattoir being the first original people and the first people to write anything theosophical. Okay, that is a fact. Okay, you can research that if you will. There are scholars who have made that determination. Secondly, the fact that Ptolemy Philadelphus was the first person to ever write or commission the writing of the Jewish Bible. That is a fact. It is. I'm not thumbsucking this, and I'm not making it up. It is a fact. Now, if the Jewish Bible emerged during the Ptolemaic era, do you understand how many millions of years came before that of Egyptian existence? Okay. Now, when I talk about the Dogon people, okay, it is part of, because the Mali was quite a huge empire. In fact, Ethiopia itself was a huge empire. It wasn't just the country in the corner of Africa. Ethiopia stretched across from the east to the west of the continent. That's how huge that portion of land was. Okay, the Dogon people stretched all the way to Tunisia, okay, to Sudan, southwards to Nigeria. So it was a vast area, and these people were spread across a vast area of the continent. So yes, a portion of those people might have been referred to as the Shemites, but understand what I'm saying. That came in much later, when the biblical world started talking about that area. Okay, now we also must take into consideration the fact that when we talk about the Bible as we know it, we can't talk about it before we talk about Emperor Constantine, the Roman emperor, who went into Kemet to actually collect more scripts from Kemet, more papyri, and in 325 AD commissioned the writing of the Bible as we know it. Okay, there are about, since then, I think now we've got is it the 16th translation of the Bible, or thereabouts? Okay, or not it's translated into many languages, but the 16th version of the Bible right now. Okay, from the time of Emperor Constantine. But we must also remember that in commissioning the Bible, okay, it happened over several years through ecumenical councils, 21 ecumenical councils. It took, I mean, these people were actually even deciding on the form that Jesus took on, okay? In one instant, at one particular ecumenical council, he was spirit before he was flesh. At an ecumenical council, he was flesh before he was spirit. So if it's a fact and this is what he was, there would be no confusion as to what he was. And that's the point that I'm making. But I still reiterate that, yes, there might have been a people who have been referred to as the Israelites, the Yeshua. Yes, I don't dispute that. I have heard about that information. I acknowledge it as well, because it has come to the fore. But still, if you look at, for example, the story of Adam and Eve that I told you about, that's an Egyptian story that was taken by the Christians. Okay?
Sumerian.
If you look at, well, Sumerian, and then it came into the Christians. Okay?
Sumeria is older than Kemet, first of all. Let's make that clear.
Yeah, it's actually not, but that's not even the thing at the moment. The fact of it, to conclude this conversation for a second, I'm going to say one thing, and that is, because to me, I have a problem with the point was made about the fact of whether the fact that the biblical people would have written about the areas in the world that they're in. This is true. Like most other people did that. The difference is that most other people understood that they were writing about the area that they were in, and didn't try to impose that understanding upon the rest of the world, right? And that is what the biblical tradition tends to do. So, for example, I don't know of the Dogon people describing themselves as Hamites. I don't know if that is in their consciousness, whether they self-identify, whether they consider themselves to be descendants of Ham. This is a biblical understanding that is being imposed upon people in West Africa. And I don't know that the Dogon understanding does that in relation to, say, for example, the people in Ethiopia and Kenya and Zimbabwe, for example, to tell them what they are and where they descend from, right? So that's a unique thing. The second thing is that when it comes to our traditions and trying to fit it into this biblical lens, we negate so much, of who and what we are and the things that our ancestors developed. So, for example, if we take on the biblical tradition, there is no room for Mkhulu and Nokulbuwane.
That's not true.
And Isiuntu and them kind of but my brother, you yourself, I've had conversations with you before.
Mkhulu is a supreme
you yourself, but you yourself reject these things, and there is no Mkhulu without Nokulbuwane, right? So this is exactly the point I'm trying to make. Like,
but the mother father system is
excuse me, let me finish, right? The point I'm making is that because the Christianized version of the Christian they do it in all the African languages. They take up the word and they say this means God, but they divorce it from the rest of the tradition, right? So it becomes Nkulu becomes an isolated concept, divorced from the rest of the philosophy in the system, right? It's a whole philosophy. So we don't just take the bits that the Christians are comfortable with. Yeah, just what I'm saying. We take the system and assess it based upon its own merit and its own development, right? As opposed to trying to superimpose something else on it and then say, yes, this is what that was because we descended from wherever. I find that to be, if we're going to talk about racist and racist revisionism in terms of the evolution of human beings, which does exist, there is also a racist tradition in terms of the negative condemnation of African spirituality and culture, and we have to come to terms with that as well, right? And I find that these Abrahamic supremacist narratives tend to do that. They tend to negate.
That's not me, Shaka.
Well, that's debatable.
I've never been anti-Hamite, anti this. I've never done that. Never.
But the point is that even the term Hamite, has racist connotations within Judeo-Christian European thought, and this is it. But it does, my brother. I'm sorry to say, right? But the term Hamite, it blatantly does. So I'm, and I don't want to go into because it's not today's subject, right?
But
I'm saying,
sorry.
Yeah, it's not a problem. Don't apologize because I did allow you to go. But and we will have this conversation another time. The only point I'm making is that in looking at Zulu tradition, which is what we're looking at today, I'm saying that there's a whole body, of philosophical thought, and culture, ideation, and so on and so forth, that is neglected when we only accept whatever it is we can fit into an Abrahamic lens. That's the only point I'm making. I think we do an injustice, to Shaka, and Nandi, right? when we do that to the system. So I'd like for us to discuss the Zulu tradition. Look at our concept like Untu, and the term Untu, as in Bantu, Muntu, exists in many different languages throughout right, and them kind of things there throughout the continent, right? But the term Untu, and when you flesh it out in terms of Muntu, Kintu, Hantu, and Kuntu, and time doesn't have to go into all of these things, but it relates to the oneness of creation and its various different fundamental expressions. Muntu being us, just what I'm saying. But the Untu is the force of creation that exists throughout it. That just the word, Muntu means human being.
That's
but when you break, but that's the point I'm trying to make, and I'm saying that you don't get that if you're only trying to relate it to the Bible.
I don't have a problem with African spiritualism.
Hold on a second. What I'm saying, Mara, is whether you do or don't. I'm saying that you don't appreciate those things if we're preoccupied with trying to fit it into what Moses said and what Abraham said. You know what I'm saying, and what King David did and what Solomon did and what Jesus later on declared. Like a lot of things are lost, and so I would implore brothers and sisters, even if you don't practice your tradition, right, but to understand it for what it is, and the completeness of what it is, because a lot of things get lost in the mix. And I've spoken for longer than I intended to, so I'm going to stop because I do want to wrap up the show, and let MA come in, please. So with all due respect to you, Zulu, you've been respectful, and I'm not trying to shut you down. It's just that I you know what I'm saying. So yeah, it's all.
We need to have a show, Shaka. You promise? Okay.
Most definitely. No, well, I didn't. Anyway, right, we'll have it. It will happen. It will happen. It will happen. All right. Go ahead, MA.
Man said, "Go ahead, Emma." You know, half an hour.
I'm sorry, bro, but yeah, man brought the Hebrew Israelite hot sauce in it. So yeah,
nah, it's fine. It's fine.
You know them ones they open up different conversations.
Yeah, and I know that's. Well, it seems like everyone, well, all three of you have something to say on that. So
yeah.
It's only natural, you know.
Yes,
I don't remember. To be fair, I don't remember what my comment was, but yeah, I just want to affirm all of the nothing I heard today from. I'm echoing. Can you hear my echo?
Nah, go ahead, bro. But I'm mute. Just
it's echoing.
Yeah, am I echoing still? No. Yeah, no. Just to affirm many of the things that all panelists have said today, except for Zulu. But no, I'm joking. All the panelists have said today, especially the sister. She raised some really pertinent topics, really important topics around rape culture and not even rape culture, but rape itself. And I also wanted to, I think one of the things I wanted to just say was that it seems Elder Mkhulu was saying Elder Mkhulu and Shakara and the sister was saying the negative of what I wanted to say, which is that obviously these I wanted to say the negative of it, which was that the absence of these structures and ritualistic structures are the reason why these cultures are able to even flourish in the first place. I think you guys were saying the positive of that particular statement, as in the ritual structure, the structures and the cultures of manhood and initiation are designed to produce men that don't follow that type of negative behavior. And I just wanted to, I know it kind of goes without saying, but I just wanted to affirm that it's the absence of those things that are producing that, if that makes sense. It sounds like it's not worth saying, but I feel like it is worth saying. You're muted, Shakara, yeah?
I understand it completely. I take the point, that it is actually the destruction of our families and the communities and nations that is producing a lot of this behavior. And it sounds theoretical to say that, but I think it's very real. I think we have to deal with the fact that we're a people that have gone through trauma, that have and the trauma has been inflicted on us collectively through the destruction of our societies and our cultures, and it has been violent. And a lot of the abuses that we inflict on each other mirror the abuses that were inflicted upon us by our colonizers. So, and I don't think we can get away from that. And I think sometimes we try to get away from it, but and sometimes we do it with very good intentions in terms of addressing the real issues. But I don't think we can ever truly solve the problems without actually dealing with that. So
apologies for the articulation being all over the place, but I did wait quite a while.
It's all good, my brother. It's all good.
We got it. Yes.
We got it. Mkhulu, I'm gonna gracefully ask you for one more question because our sister Kawana has been waiting for a long time for this question to be answered, if I may.
Okay.
So this is the last one. It says, please can you speak about the courting between boys and girls and how we can have such interactions between boys and girls in a culturally appropriate way? I think that's a good question to end on.
Okay. Now, when we talk about the rites of passage, courting happens at a particular stage. When a girl has become, I would say, around 17 years of age, between 15 and 17. In fact, once she has commenced with her menstrual cycle, that is the discussion that is being had with her. She now needs to change how she behaves. She now needs to understand that boys are going to be attracted to her. She needs to understand how to respond. And she needs to understand in how the courtship needs to happen culturally, to avoid sexual intercourse in the courtship, what courtship actually is, as opposed to what sexual activity is. And the boys likewise are being taught the same way, how to behave, how to conduct themselves. There are certain things which are a bit sensitive and which are a bit sacred to talk about here, but I will mention just on a high level, so that at least we get an understanding of what I'm talking about. There is something that we refer to as ugusoma, okay, where the boy and the girl might get into contact with each other, but there is no sexual penetration. And they are taught how to do that, so that even if they are in a relationship, the girl still remains a virgin, the boy still remains a virgin, until such time they reach an age where or reach a stage where they are getting married. Okay? So both parties are being taught about this particular item of courtship so that they don't overstep the boundary. Okay? Now, it's also important in the rites of passage to have institutions. For example, the boys will have the older boys in Israel who will then guide them also in terms of how to pursue a girl, what to do, what not to do. Okay. Similarly with girls, kukhona intombazane esendala kuthiwa yiqhikiza, one of the older girls from this group. She might be 18, 19, 20. Iqhikiza is the one who then guides these younger girls as to how to behave when she is being approached by a boy, what to do in a relationship, what not to do. So these are the rites of passage cover these areas. These discussions, which are difficult to have between father and son, mother and daughter, father and daughter, mother and son. These discussions are held here in the rites of passage by the patriarchs and the matriarchs who are teaching these children, who are raising these children. So in that sense, then the courtship happens differently, as opposed to I meet somebody and I say, give me your number, and I WhatsApp them, and suddenly I say, let's meet and we have sex. You know, it's a different ball game altogether. Different ethos altogether. I hope that answers your question in some way.
Yes, thank you very much. And there's actually a similar process in the Kikuyu tradition in terms of what's the word that you use for it, where they're allowed to physically interact but not have sex?
Yeah, ugusoma.
Ugusoma. There's a similar tradition among the Kikuyu where they're guided in such a way. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? What's the physical interaction? Not to be explicit.
He's asking
where they avoid sexual penetration in the main. That's what.
So they're allowed to.
You mean like kissing and stuff like that?
Yeah. So they're allowed to experience sexual pleasure, but not penetration. Yeah. Right. So, but I think that it's a part of a rites of passage program, right? And that takes place. So that the sexual expression is not repressed completely, but guided, in a certain way. And I also think, because I was taught about this when I was very young, and I also think that the other side to that is that boys learn to be sexually responsive to girls or women in that respect. So it's not just about our own pleasure.
Yes,
this is what I'm saying. Which is what penetration is designed to is often reduced to, if that makes sense. The male, but if I'm not allowed to penetrate, then I have to behave differently in this scenario. I see that as a mentality that is positive in terms of developing as a man. So
you understand now how that then prevents issues of rape. When you go through that process,
but
you understand very clearly.
Does it not provide temptation? If you're like teasing.
No, I think it teaches discipline.
It teaches discipline. That's the whole idea. Yes, that's the whole idea. Is that it teaches discipline and it teaches self-control, because the whole idea of our spirituality is to overcome our animalistic nature. So we overcome your animalistic attributes of desire, of greed, of corruption. You overcome those by becoming more spiritual, by elevating yourself to that level, which is what our ancestors have always tried to do, to elevate themselves. When we talk about, for example, becoming Ma'ak Heru, what Sebai Mwata Ashby will tell us about overcoming your animalistic nature is becoming Ma'ak Heru, raising the Heru within yourself. So these are the disciplines that teach that part, that I don't need to be sexually active with a girl in order to experience what it is to be in a relationship, what it is to have affection, what it is to love, you know? And that's the discipline. Because now of late, our young people think that sex is love. And sex and love are two different things. They're not even related. Because you can have love without sex at all. So it does not equate to sex does not equate to love. Okay? But it can be a product of a loving relationship when the time is right for that to take place.
Beautiful. Thank you very much, Mkhulu. It's been beautiful. I'm sure there's so much more questions that people have to ask and get answered, and there's so much more things that you could go into, and there's so much more we can learn, and you can learn, and we can all learn. The point of the conversation is to look at our traditions and what they teach us about manhood, yeah, and what aspects of our manhood we need to develop and be conscious of developing, especially in relation to the young men that are around us. And so we're going to take this conversation into affirming Black manhood, affirming African manhood on the 20th of June. I want to remind brothers and sisters of the retreat. I'm going to get the image up again, Mkhulu. Give me a second. But if you are in Azania, South Africa, and want to stay in touch with Mkhulu, feel free to check out this event. I'm going to bring it up on the screen right now. Hold on.
Yeah. It's also on the Zazi Know Thyself website as well.
I'm going to put that on the chat as well. Hold on a second. I'm trying to get the right page. Right. So the website is Zazi Know Thyself.Africa. Yeah. Zazi Know Thyself.Africa. Yeah. You can see it on the bottom of the flyer here. And you can get Zazi Know Thyself also on your Facebook to check that out for more information. And hopefully, do you do this annually, Mkhulu?
Yes. Yes.
So maybe one day I'll be able to join you for this. We
do this annually, and we observe all 4 cosmic events, so the solstices and the equinoxes.
Right, beautiful.
Yeah.
So these are
and others in between, but mainly the solstices and the equinoxes. Those are the 4 major cosmic events.
Observe. Okay, beautiful. So yes, I look forward to joining you one year for that, Mkhulu. You know what I'm saying? But give thanks for continuing the work of our ancestors.
We'd love to have you. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Thank you as well, because we're well over time, and you've been very gracious on your birthday as well. So apologize to your family for me personally for keeping you so long and being so gracious. I thank them for being so gracious for giving you to us for this amount of time. We appreciate it, family. And we're going to lock it off right there. So do stay tuned for more, and stay tuned for the information concerning affirming Black manhood. Thank you all for listening. Thank you all for contributing. And we appreciate you. Siyabonga. Affirming Black manhood, taking back the power to define, develop, protect, and project what it means to be a Black man in today's world. On Sunday, the 20th of June, we invite you to join the conversations facilitated by our esteemed lineup, engaging us all in addressing various aspects of Black manhood from a range of perspectives, featuring Baba Mwalimu Baruti, defining principles of Black manhood, Robin Walker, the economics of Black manhood, Ifayomi Grant, rebuilding productive African manhood whilst challenging misogyny, Brother Leader Bandaka, Black manhood, fatherhood, and rites of passage, Baba Buntu, building Black brotherhood. This is an online event taking place Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021, from 12 p.m. UK time. For tickets and more information, visit shakaraspeaks.com. International guests, feel free to join us at any time or catch the playback. This is an event for Black men by Black men. Affirming Black Manhood. Affirming Black Manhood. Taking back the power to define, develop, protect, and project what it means to be a black man in today's world. On Sunday, the 20th of June, we invite you to join the conversations facilitated by our esteemed lineup, engaging us all in addressing various aspects of black manhood from a range of perspectives. Featuring Baba Mwalimu Baruti, defining principles of black manhood; Robin Walker, the economics of black manhood; Ifayomi Grant, rebuilding productive African manhood whilst challenging misogyny; Brother Leader Bandaka, black manhood, fatherhood, and rites of passage; Baba Buntu, building black brotherhood. This is an online event taking place Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021, from 12 p.m. UK time. For tickets and more information, visit shakaraspeaks.com. International guests, feel free to join us at any time or catch the playback. This is an event for black men by black men. Affirming Black Manhood. Affirming Black Manhood. Taking back the power to define, develop, protect, and project what it means to be a black man in today's world. On Sunday, the 20th of June, we invite you to join the conversations facilitated by our esteemed lineup, engaging us all in addressing various aspects of black manhood from a range of perspectives. Featuring Baba Mwalimu Baruti, defining principles of black manhood; Robin Walker, the economics of black manhood; Ifayomi Grant, rebuilding productive African manhood whilst challenging misogyny; Brother Leader Bandaka, black manhood, fatherhood, and rites of passage; Baba Buntu, building black brotherhood. This is an online event taking place Sunday, the 20th of June, 2021, from 12 p.m. UK time. For tickets and more information, visit shakaraspeaks.com. International guests, feel free to join us at any time or catch the playback. This is an event for black men by black men. Affirming Black Manhood.